in, ladies and gentlemen, to MBR, or as we like to call it around here, Nothing But Rants, the show where I find topics that I'm oddly passionate about and I pontificate upon them. These are not hot takes, but rather takes that I'm hot about. What's up? You really like that?
Let's shut up and grind some tape.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Film Guide Network. Again, just me and my boy Christian today. Brooks is out at a high school football game. I believe he's at Buford right now, still running busy on the recruiting trail as he is and has continued to over the past couple weeks and will continue to over the next couple weeks. So just me and Christian today in the studio. But as always, we got a loaded show for you guys. Even if it is just us two, we're going to get things done. We're going to make sure that we provide you guys with some pristine content on a beautiful Thursday today. And the first thing that we wanted to discuss with you guys is a pretty big topic, an interesting topic, and one that when you hear about it, you want to say, that sounds like cap. But maybe it isn't. Maybe the way that he phrased it, maybe the way that Brian Kelly mentioned this quote and mentioned paying players and purchasing players, maybe perhaps he isn't capping. Maybe there's some truth behind this. But LSU head coach Brian Kelly mentioned today that LSU does not go about buying players. They are not one of these programs that goes out there and just drops a bag to get these kids to come to their school, because he was asked about trying to get some interior defensive line help for his roster and building up some depth. And he said a lot of these kids, they're asking about these dollar amounts. Like, how much are you going to pay me? What is my salary going to be at your school if I commit to you? And he said, that's not how we do business over here. We want players to come here because they want to be at LSU, not because we can put a pretty little price tag beside your helmet and you can come play for us for a year and then go on about your business. So, Christian, what do you think? Do you actually buy into Brian Kelly, what he's saying, buy into these words? Or do you think this is kind of just some lip service about, like, our program is built on different foundations?
I'm one of these believers where it's not always not what you say and exactly what you say. I think there's somewhere in between where Brian Kelly's telling the truth here. Look, LSU has to do some sort of compensation for players if they want to do recruits. That's just the way it is. I do think that Brian Kelly, however, is probably not one of these coaches and teams that allows players to kind of negotiate and strong arm your teams for salaries and things such as that. So I'm sure at some point Brian Kelly, and what some people would do is classify as that he has in fact bought players. But if you look at, Brian Kelly's probably comparing himself to other teams that are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars just to get a roster together. So that's probably where he's coming at from. So I don't know if necessarily he is buying players or not, but I feel like he's telling the truth.
Yeah, I think he is too. I think if you don't take it into the perspective of LSU is just out here like not paying players at all, like another head coach mentioned that we'll talk about later, not paying players at all. I think if you go about it a different way of we hear this phrase of bidding wars, like if a player is in the middle of a recruitment, whether it's a transfer portal player or a kid out of high school, whichever case it is, you hear these things about bidding wars of, well, Georgia's going to give me $100,000, but LSU's going to give me $250,000, and it goes back and forth. I think that's more so maybe what he's getting at, and what he probably means is that when he was looking in the transfer portal for one of these defensive linemen to come to his school, it was probably like, this is what we have for you. If you want to come here, like, this is what we can provide you with. This is a dollar amount we have. And if the player was like, well, this is what so-and-so's offering me, then it's like, well, I'm sorry. Like, this is all that we can offer you. Like, we're not going to be in the business of raising our price just to get you to come here. I think that's probably what he was getting at. But I think it is easy, especially too, like, in this instance, it was just a tweet, and you know how it is on social media. Like, all you do is you put a picture of Brian Kelly and you put this quote of, we're not in the business of buying players. And then people are like, well, that's fugazi. That's not true. That's not true at all, because everybody's out here buying players. But I think, once again, like, you provide some context around it. I would also agree that there is probably some truth to what Brian Kelly was saying.
Yeah, and Brian Kelly's problem is also he's one of these guys in college football where he's already kind of not liked.
Yeah.
Like, everyone kind of views Brian Kelly as he's kind of a dick, which I feel unfortunate for him, just because I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but obviously he had all the family stuff when he came here, and then leaving Cincinnati, and people didn't like him when he was at Notre Dame, so things such as that. So he's already in danger of not having teams where people believe in him when he says certain things. So it kind of goes against him. So when you are Brian Kelly like that, you have to necessarily choose your words more carefully. I do think bidding war is a better way to frame it. Like, we're not going to get in bidding wars for players. Obviously, every collegiate team pays players to some degree at some point now. Like, that's just how you survive. Like, even though, we'll talk about this later, some teams aren't doing it to freshmen, but you still have to have some sort of NIL package for if you want to have some sort of roster. So I think he is paying or technically buying players. I don't think he's getting in bidding wars.
Yeah, and I think too, like he was specifically asked about interior defensive line help in the transfer portal, like the spring window. And to me, like that's very different than recruiting these high school kids, like getting together your 2024 or 2025 recruiting class or whichever year it is, as opposed to like these transfer portal kids. Because as we know, like typically now, like there's different scenarios of why kids enter the spring window or enter the transfer portal at all, whether it be they need more opportunity, or again, like some of these guys, it's, well, I had a great year at TCU or wherever, like the one defensive lineman that entered the transfer portal for the Horned Frogs, like maybe I can get my price re-upped and I can go get some more monetary value out of my college career as opposed to where I am now. And I think that's kind of what he's mentioning here. And, defensive line was one of those positions where there was actually some value potentially in this spring window, and it wasn't the case for like that for a lot of other positions. So defensive linemen were probably getting a lot bigger asking prices or asking for a lot higher prices as opposed to these other positions because they could. There were better players in the portal and there was more people available for colleges to choose from. So again, I think he probably hit the nail on the head for his scenario specifically of like we probably couldn't afford because there's too many high prices running around the market.
Yeah, and I think another thing that he probably meant by that was he talked about how guys want to be bought nowadays. Yeah. Like there was no negotiations. Like the term buying a player just means they're completely selling out and they're not worried about anything other than monetary value. So like maybe necessarily he's talking about we don't want players that only want money. We want players that are concerned about their development, how they're going to be played, or what kind of playing time they're going to get, things such as that, how they're going to be developed as college football players, not necessarily just bought out. So I understand what Brian Kelly's saying, but I think the classic Brian Kelly story is I agree with most everything he's saying, but the way he delivers it and what he says doesn't always come through to the best possible message. So
no doubt about that. He's always been just kind of casted out as this oddball type person.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's how people are going to continue to perceive him. You can't do anything about him. Maybe it goes to his advantage a little bit, but yeah, for sure. Brian Kelly not always perceived as the most heartfelt and straightforward person.
No, I mean, at this point in your career, you're probably not going to do anything to change that. So that's just kind of the mantra around you now. So. Yeah. There is another coach that was kind of up in arms about the current state of college football, not just players getting negotiated or trying to be bought out, but just poaching in general.
Who is this? I want to hear about, like, you're talking about like not paying players at all?
So not paying freshman players. Oh. So the Boise State head coach, I'm blanking on his name right now. Do you remember?
I do not. I can pull it up right now though.
But anyway, he came out in an interview today. Someone asked him about, transfer portal and things such as that. And he basically said, yeah, we've had about 12 guys that have gotten phone calls from certain teams come to try to get him in the portal and things such as that. It's a very heated, we can't post the video obviously, can we?
I don't think so.
But if you go and watch this, he's getting very heated talking about how, yeah, we've got certain guys that are just coming and being called once a week by X amount of teams, just hop in the portal, and it's just not right. And it says a lot about the loyalty of this program that these guys have. And then he goes on to continue, and he talks about how, if you're a recruit in high school and you want to get paid your freshman year for NIL stuff, you're not getting that. So basically, Boise State does not pay players anything NIL the first year there, which is a very interesting tactic.
This is Spencer Danielson, by the way. He is the head coach at Boise State right now, and yes, you're right, he got very animated during this conversation. And one of the players that he specifically mentioned was his running back Ashton Genty, and he's the running back. He ran for almost 1,500 yards last year. I think he almost had 2,000 total yards last year for Boise State. So and he's a sophomore, so he has at least 1 year left of college football, and obviously a hot commodity, especially a running back position, someone like that. You have to imagine that. And he mentioned, Danielson mentions that his phone was ringing. People were trying to tell him to enter the portal. Not that Genty was wanting to enter the portal, just head coaches telling him, or college football programs more so, telling him like, hey, you should enter the portal because we want you. Again, tampering, trying to get a player to come to their school and whatnot.
Trying to buy players.
And Genty stayed put, and he kind of used this as an example of like, these are the types of players that we want. And he said, you mentioned that he said that if you're a high school kid and you're wanting money, like, don't come here. He specifically said, like, if that is your number one priority, please do not come to Boise State because you are going to hate me and you're going to think I'm a jerk because that's just not how we do business around here. And, I think it is part of which that he is in a unique situation. It is Boise State. It is not one of these SEC, Big 10, or even Big 12 or ACC programs, not one of these Power 4 conference programs. He is part of the group of 5. So you have to imagine like NIL situation compared to like the schools that he's more than likely recruiting against more so than others, like a little different than the typical scenario. And you have to imagine too, like I should have looked this up before the show, but I would like to know how much of his roster is made up of people from the transfer portal. Like, how many kids are you actually recruiting out of high school? Or, like, how many kids are you landing in your recruiting class? Like, is it a majority of it made up out of transfer portal kids? Because if it is, well, then that's why you're not really paying freshmen, because you really don't have to, because the chunk of your roster isn't made up of these kids that you recruit out of high school and they're here. But his statement also makes it seem like that's who he wants, is these kids that come into Boise State, they stick around, and now these kids kind of flip-flopping all throughout the transfer portal. So I'm going to look up his recruiting class real quick.
And Brooks said this in the group chat today. He said, if you're one of these high school recruits that has the ability to leverage how much money you make coming out of high school, what your NIL package is going to look like freshman year, things such as that, the chances of you going to Boise State are slim anyways. Like, let's just be realistic. Like, the big money guys aren't get to go to these group of 5 schools rarely ever. Like, the only time you can really think of that is Travis Hunter going to an HBCU. So your 4, 5, and even some high quality 3 stars aren't going to necessarily be negotiating with Boise State. So it makes sense. He does kind of have this luxury to say, like, hey, we're not going to pay guys, just frankly because the guys that you would have to pay aren't necessarily the upper echelon of the upper echelon. That's not the slight Boise State. That's just the way it is. Yeah,
so he had 22 kids committed from his 2024 recruiting class, and he also had 5 transfers commit to his program. But also, like, here's one of the bigger names, like Malachi Nelson, former USC quarterback, rated as a 5-star coming out of high school. Like, that's probably where a lot of his NIL money, like if you're going to go get a Malachi Nelson to come play at Boise State, that's probably where a lot of your NIL money has to go to anyways. And it's smart by him because, again, someone like Boise State, like, that's how you're going to make an impactful program in today's world of college football. It's not by you getting these 22 kids out of high school, these 3-star kids for the most part, coming to your program and hoping that they can change things. Now, that is the foundation. Like, you have to build the foundation before you put everything else around it. So you still have to take care of business on the recruiting trail. But like getting a Malachi Nelson is extremely important for a program like Boise State because that's going to help you compete immediately. It's going to put you in an upper tier compared to your other competitors in your conference. And again, like especially now, like you have to think of these group of 5 teams, like you're fighting for an automatic bid in the college football playoff. So it's extremely important for you not only to be better in your division or your conference, but you have to be the best group of 5 team in the entire country, and you have to earn that playoff spot. So they're fighting for a lot more now. It actually adds a lot of significance. It's an interesting thing to think about of like how group of 5 teams now almost have the old version of college football of where one loss could mean the end of your season in regards to playoff hopes. So I think it's cool that maybe they have some different expectations and their seasons are treated a little differently amongst them compared to like the rest of college football, where now like you could lose 2 games and potentially make the top 12 because for group of 5 you only get that one spot and that one guaranteed spot.
Yeah, not to mention if you have guys on your roster that are extremely talented and elite, you're going to have to fend off poaching them. Like he's already talked about this. He had a 1,400-yard running back this year that was getting calls left and right. So that's going to add to the stress of just being a group of 5 coach, combined with the fact that, hey, this isn't like the SEC where, if you have a 3-loss team, you still have a chance of getting in. Like one loss for you in the group of 5 and you're really in really big trouble there.
I actually thought about this today because, Gatlin Bear, who's a wide receiver, I believe he ended up committing to Michigan, if I remember correctly. I want to make sure I get this right. But he started out as like this 3-star wide receiver. Georgia was actually in on the mix for him, and then he ended up he committed to Boise State. Then he's actually going to Oregon now. I believe he was committed to Michigan at one point, but Boise State was one of the schools in on this because he's from Idaho. And I thought about like maybe this is one of those examples of he decommitted from Boise State at the beginning of December, and then it was predicted that he would committed to Michigan, and then he ended up committing to Oregon. But I thought about like Gatlin Bear was one of these kids who was a 3-star, and maybe Boise State was one of these opportunistic places for him to go to because you're not one of these 5-star wide receivers, you're not one of the bigger names in the market. Well, then all of a sudden he starts gaining traction, and he ended up being, according to 247 Sports, a 5-star wide receiver by the end of it. Like insane track times, like super speed guy. Again, some big Power 5, Power 4 programs are in on this kid, but I have to think like he committed to Boise State and then he decommitted. Like this may have been one of those situations where oh, well, now I'm all of a sudden a 5-star. I'm too big for Boise State, but maybe I go to Boise State if the NIL situation looks a little different. Well, Danielson's telling you, like, it is different here. That's not how we do business here. So that maybe it was the reason, especially too, like, not a whole lot of 5-stars end up at Boise State anyways. But it did make me think about that situation and how, like, maybe that had some type of impact on landing a player like Gatlin Bear.
Yeah, and that's just kind of the risk you're going to have to assume when you run a program like that you're probably never going to pull the upper echelon guys because you just simply, the fact that you're not going to pay them means you can't afford them. But you are always going to get guys that are truly playing, that love football, that care about teamwork, that care about being developed and care about being developed into a better person. So it's a win-lose type thing. It's a lose if you have national title aspirations, which, let's be fair, I don't think Boise State has national championship aspirations year in and year out. They have years they're like, hey, we might be a playoff team this year, but you can also get there with a team full of guys that really just want to play football.
Yeah, and I think too, like, somewhere like, I think this also creates some type of new form of motivation too for your players. Like, even if you aren't getting paid as a freshman, like, if you don't have the opportunity to do that, like, it creates this motivation of like, well, I want to make sure I get to year 2 and like I can earn that money for myself. And maybe it creates like this underlying, type of motivation for that program, which probably something you need some more motivation of playing at a place like Boise State. And again, like competing for one of those final playoff spots, competing for that group of 5 lock-in spot for the playoff. Like, those all can be good things, but I think it has to be handled in the right way. Danielson, just as off of like the 2-minute video that was posted today, he seems like a fiery coach. He seems like a guy that can captivate a room, and he seems like a guy that means his words and means everything that he says. So I think he's obviously doing a good job up there. He hasn't been there for very long, but it takes a special kind of character, I think, to be able to do something like this. Yeah. Again, it also takes special circumstances.
Yeah, and I mean, the era of NIL and transfer portal and all that stuff is driven so many college football coaches away. Actually, there's one college football coach that we believe was the greatest of all time was driven away because of it, and Vern Lundquist kind of touched on this a little late, but do you want to go and start talking about that?
Which one were you talking about?
So I love Vern Lundquist. I know that people have kind of over the years given him shit for the way he called games and how he sometimes didn't seem to be in Georgia's favor, or he always seemed to be against your team, but that's the way it is. But this quote and this comment from Vern Lundquist, while it's not wrong, is kind of just like, it's a no shit thing.
It's a very Vern Lundquist moment, in my opinion. Like, this is just like everything that people hated Vern for it while he was in the booth. Like, this is exactly kind of like reciprocates exactly how people felt about him because of making a comment like this at the time that he did, of like, well, no duh, Vern. Like, thanks for stating the obvious. But yeah, it was interesting what he said about Nick. I'll let you go ahead and read that off and let him know.
So basically, Vern Lundquist was talking about college football, as he usually does, and the question about Nick Saban came up. And he basically said along the lines of, I think NIL is what drove Nick Saban away. Like, he speculates that. That's his kind of speculation. Although we've already seen Nick Saban testify before Congress and say, the sport that I loved is no longer what it was. Yep. He talked about how his wife, Miss Terry, said, why are we having these parents and recruits coming over to our house? All they care about is money. Like, Nick Saban has made it very obvious that the main reason that he left college football was, 1, he was getting old, and 2, he was tired of dealing with all the NIL changes that had come about. So for Vern Lundquist to come out, 4 months after his 4 or 5 months after his retirement and say, like, I think it was NIL that did him in, is kind of just it's why everyone why the people who disliked Vern Lundquist disliked Vern Lundquist, just because it felt like he was stating obvious things where it's kind of like, well, yeah, no shit.
Yeah, to me, it was like, he mentioned at the bottom of the article, or there was a quote in the bottom of the article that was like, and look, me and Nick Saban are friends. You cover enough Alabama football games, you get to know the guy. So me and Nick Saban, we talk to one another, and we're friends. I think that was more so what Vern was trying to get across in these quotes. Like, oh yeah, I know Nick Saban. Like, him and I are good buddies. But yeah, again, it's just like typical Vern. Like, clearly he's not reading anything or hasn't read anything about this situation, because, I mean, if he had, then it wouldn't be like this thing of like, oh, well, let me dig up some dirt on this and let me give you guys the inside scoop on what's going on. But I think it too, like, do you think that like Vern was, because Gary and Vern were both heavily hated. They're like, especially at the end of their time as the CBS commentators. Like, I mean, Gary got a little bit longer run than he did there at the end. But like, do you think it was just because like you got the same old thing every single year, and that's why people started to grow to hate them? Because I think like once you experience something for so long, then you start to nitpick. Like you find more holes in things because it's just what you're used to. But I've always wondered, like, do you think it is just because they were around for so long why people hated them?
I have a theory on this, and I think it mostly stems from you just want something to be mad at when your team's losing. Like there were plenty of times as a Georgia fan myself watching Georgia in the early 2010s when things weren't necessarily going great and Vern Lundquist was on the call and Georgia would be losing, things wouldn't be going well, and he would say something kind of obvious or kind of incorrect. Like I remember one time vividly, the play clock was winding down and he goes, "Shot clock." He called it the shot clock. And I just remember like getting so irritated by that. So I think the theory is that if your team's not doing well, you automatically are looking for something. You're automatically on edge. So Vern Lundquist coming out and saying things that might not be super accurate kind of would piss you off. So I think that's kind of what it was. But I love Vern Lundquist. I grew up watching him. I grew up to his voice. So it's just one of those things. It's like, come on, Vern.
Yeah, I don't care how much you hated him. Like now that it's gone, like every time you hear the CBS jingle, like on a Twitter clip or on social media, or you hear Vern and Gary like introducing to the SEC 3:30 primetime matchup of the day, like between Georgia and Alabama or Georgia and Florida, like that brings some nostalgia back. But Vern did get pretty notorious for mispronouncing names or just like getting situations wrong, or like just focusing in on the wrong things during the broadcast. And so, I mean, I think they probably were a little bit overhated. I think for a long time, like CBS had a great crew, and him and Gary will always be remembered for like one of the great college football broadcast teams. But interesting to see like who's going to become the next hated SEC football commentator over the years with ESPN. Interested to see how that plays out.
Some people have already turned on Herb Street, but we'll see.
Oh, that's true. All the college game day guys though get some flack at some point. Like you make one comment, like Des continually gets it, and rightfully so most of the time, because that guy does speak some nonsense every now and then. But like at some point, like you sit there on a desk for 4 hours every Saturday during college football season with everybody tuning in, like you're going to piss somebody off. You're going to get something slightly wrong probably, or something's not going to come across the right way, and you're going to get some crap for it. And so like Kirk Herbstreit definitely getting the blunt end of that.
Have we welcomed them in yet?
We haven't. And we haven't been told them about some like good investments they could be making too. Like
what are some good investments you would make?
Well, I heard about this place called PrizePicks, and it's a place where you can play some sport prop bets. And the best thing about it too is like with NBA playoffs going on, MLB season is in full swing, like all this action going on about these prop bets that you could be placing. If you use promo code Brooks today as a first-time user, you get a 100% deposit match, which means if you put $100 in, you get $100 right back. So that's $200 worth of action that you could be using, spreading across the playoffs, MLB games as well, like getting in on that action and making you some bread this summer, because everybody needs some extra beer money for the summer or whatever events that you want to be attending. Like everybody needs some extra money. So PrizePicks today, promo code Brooks. That's a good investment these people should be making.
It's a great investment. It's one you should definitely be making. It's one of the only guaranteed ways to make money in this frugal economy right now. So, but yeah, if you're just joining in, Brooks obviously is not here tonight. He is once again on the spring tour. He's in Buford High School. Did they have a rain delay because of that? Or?
I don't think it was a rain delay. I think there's like potential rain delay of like it may not end up being played today, but I think the weather ended up holding up for him.
So yeah, if you tune in and you see that Brooks isn't here, it's not because he doesn't care about you. It's just because he's doing another thing for his job. So we're taking over the show tonight, and we've run into, what is this, our third solo show now?
I know. It's like we did one, like
we did a half show when he came in.
We did a half show, but like the first time we got to do a solo show, just us two, like that was a couple months ago, and it's because Brooks was under the weather. And then now it's like we got to do another one together, and then we did a half show together, and now again today it's just you and me. So the audience at least is kind of getting to know us a little bit more, I feel like. Whether they like us or not, I don't know, but I think you guys like us. You guys seem to give some good feedback when it's just me and Christian cutting it up in the studio. We don't get to use all of our fancy cameras that we have in this great studio. It's just a one shot, just me and you in the picture, but still nonetheless, some great content, some great conversations, and some great people in the chat as always.
So moving on, Sonny Dykes is basically not doomed college football, but predicted how it's going to be split up even more.
To me, these comments didn't make a whole lot of sense. I think, again, this was almost to me like stating the obvious. Like, I don't know that, again, but you can continue on that one.
It's basically just become coaches that are complaining about different things now. Like Sonny Dykes was basically asked about the state of college football and what he said about it. And in particular, he talks about how the group of 5 and the Power 4 now he thinks are going to be split up. And the quote that came from it was, Alabama and Louisiana Tech aren't playing the same sport. Which, to be fair, they've never been playing the same sport.
They have never been in the same category.
This idea that all of a sudden that NIL came a thing and teams were able to spend more money and teams started spending money on rosters, and now all of a sudden the playing field isn't level to me. It just doesn't make sense. I understand splitting teams up, and that's kind of what we've been dealing with. But this idea that the group of 5 and the Power 4 are going to split into their own entities in separate leagues is very interesting to me.
Yeah, it just kind of felt like stating the obvious, because I don't think anybody has ever associated the group of 5 with the Power 5 or even the Power 4 now. I think people, whether it is actually divided or not, people have always kind of associated those things as two different things and on two very different levels. I mean, people already divide up and level out like the different levels of the Power 4. Like you say, the SEC is here, the Big 10 is here, and then you have the Big 12 and the ACC kind of down here and the Pac-12 when they were around, whatever. But like, people always divide things up, and I don't think anybody has ever seen Alabama or Louisiana Tech as equals in this.
No.
I think everybody understands that they have to do things at different levels, and obviously Alabama has more pristine talent every single year because Louisiana Tech just can't quite compete with that, whether it's monetarily or just because of the player product that they have available to them. But one quote in this that I thought was just kind of funny was Coach Lashley, who's the head coach for SMU.
Brett Lashley,
Yeah. He says, would you rather get beat 48-7 to Georgia in the first round or play for a championship? Some say it makes FCS football, but FCS football thrives for what it is. What saves Group of 5 football is competition. Thought this was a little ironic. While Sonny Dykes was not the one that made this comment.
Yeah.
Sonny Dykes was the head coach that got absolutely blown out by Georgia in the national championship. And that's kind of what I'm getting at, is like, there's always kind of been these different levels to these programs. Like, no one ever is going to see TCU right now on the same level as Georgia. And people didn't even see that at the time when they were playing against one another in the national championship game.
Yeah, and I kind of understand the argument of like, hey, why don't we just make the group of 5 have their own tournament, have their own separate entities?
Yeah.
Why do we keep trying to fit a square peg into a round hole with forcing them into this obligatory playoff spot where everyone knows they're going to be a sacrificial lamb? I get that much. I don't understand the split of it. And Sonny Dykes goes on to talk about it, like how it's even harder now for teams because, you know, if you have a guy who has a great season, he's going to get plucked away. That's going to happen even if you split.
Yeah.
Like, you can still go in group of 5 teams and be like, hey, you know, Boise State's running back just had a 1,500-yard season. Even though they have nothing to do with our league, let's try and see if we can get him to switch leagues or things such as that. I don't even know if that would be transfer portal because you'd have 2 separate leagues now. But I think it's so many coaches are upset looking at the state of college football, and no one's really sitting down. They're not sitting down and thinking about true thought-out solutions as to why this is. And I get it. Like, you're a college football coach in the Power 4. Like, you don't need to be thinking about solutions of how to fix it. But when you're asked about it and then you give your opinion, it just makes it look bad.
Well, too, like, he mentions like players having a great season and they get plucked away. That happens in Power 4 conferences. Like, that happens. It happened to TCU this year. Their defensive lineman had a great season this past year. So what does he do? He enters the transfer portal and ends up going somewhere else. He ends up going to a bigger program, probably one that he can get used better and probably gets more looks at than what he would at TCU. Like, it isn't just like someone having a great season at one of these Group of 5 teams and then going on to the SEC or whatnot. Like, this happens with bottom level Power 4 teams in this conference. Like, it's not just like one thing or the other, and it's not just happening to one of these conferences or like one of these groups and not the other. Like, it happens on these different levels. And again, like, that's why I thought it was so weird that like Sonny Dykes acted like people always thought of the Group of 5 and the FBS football like as the same thing, or not FBS, but as the Power 4 conference, like as equals, because I don't think anybody ever has, and I don't think he should. I mean, again, like, we don't view a lot of college football teams as equals. We don't, like, we may view them as equals in the grand scheme of things of like what you're competing for, what you have to do to win a national title and whatnot. But as far as like what your aspirations of a program are and what exactly you can accomplish at a certain program, like, I don't think anybody views every single program as the same.
Correct. Now, with that said, I think that that's kind of where college football is heading, if it's not already there. Like, I do think that we're going to wake up one day sometime in the future and you're going to have a super league where the SEC and the Big Ten have basically swallowed all the teams that are worth a shit, and everyone else is going to start their own different conference because you just know you can't compete with it. I think Sonny Dykes has a good prediction here. I just think it's kind of like, why is this a problem to you necessarily? And why are you talking about it as if it were a problem?
Yeah, and again, I think he may have probably more so been getting out of like, if the Big Ten and the SEC do eventually just become one big thing and they become like the two big conferences, and like, again, that means other teams are going to get cut out, other teams are going to get left behind. Like, at that point, then there probably does need to be some rediscussions of how things operate in college football, because you would have to at that point. Like, if you have some of these big, like, current Power 4 conference teams that don't make the cut for the next change that comes to college football, then yeah, probably things need to be reassociated. They're going to be viewed differently, and they need to be viewed differently. And you probably need to like alter the college football playoff or however that's going to work now that they're expanding to even more this next year. Like, it's so weird because like it almost feels like the college football playoff is changing ahead of schedule compared to with the rest of college football. I don't know if you can use that as any form of indicator of what could potentially be on the horizon, but it seems like maybe they're changing things a little too fast before we actually know, like, let the dust settle and let things like play out, and how these conference realignment things are happening and whatnot.
Yeah.
So just interesting conversation in general.
Yeah, and this idea that teams are going to be left behind and this is like, oh my God, this is the worst thing ever. This has gone on for the entirety of college football. ESPN actually put out a really interesting piece today talking about certain teams that have been left behind and, you know, how they fared. Like, they talk about Idaho and SMU and even TCU when they were left out of the Southwest Conference and then had to join the Mountain West, eventually join the Big 12. Like, we've seen a bunch of different teams be left out behind. So
yeah, and you know, it's interesting that you mentioned like TCU, one of these programs who like back in the day was considered like they got demoted from a conference, and now they've started to climb their way back up, and now they're in the Big 12. Now they could end up being one of these teams that again doesn't make the cut if things continue to change and there ends up being this big massive conference between the Big 10 and the SEC. But like, there is possible like ways for them to work their way back up. So it is interesting to think about, like, even if it does get to this point of where you just have two conferences, change is inevitable in college football as we know it. So like, maybe we do see these teams that get cut, like they slowly creep their way back into the mix. Like, eventually there's room for them to come back into play with these two big conferences or whatnot. But I did think it was interesting, like all these charts that they provided, like the impact it has when they do get demoted, like win totals and how big of a success they have over their years and whatnot, and like how it overall has impacted the program since it's happened.
Well, the thing that sticks out to me the most is more often than not, when a team gets promoted to a bigger conference, their win percentage goes down. Now, obviously, you're going to make more revenue split. Like, here's a perfect example. Houston, when they joined the AAC, was hovering around 65% win percentage. They joined the Big 12 in 2022. It's down to 20. Now, obviously, that's 1 year sample size, but even the year before that, it was out to 50. So, I mean, this idea, like, it goes again, TCU, when they were in the Mountain West Conference, or in the right before they won the Rose Bowl in the Mountain West, right? They were at 80% win percentage. Right before the title game, they were down to 50 before they hired Sonny Dykes. So it's like, that was also after they joined the Big 12. So this idea that leaving teams behind hurts them, it doesn't necessarily, it might hurt them financially, but from the standpoint of games won and your ability to come back and win, like, TCU, I think, is a perfect example of this, because you start out in the Southwest, you left, you come back, Gary Patterson joined, you joined the Conference USA, you joined the Mountain West, just a slow upward climb. Then you're in the Big 12, you make it to the freaking title game. And now, obviously, things are getting changed. So we'll see what happens with this whole leaving behind thing. But I don't think it's the end of the world when teams get left behind. Obviously, it's very unfortunate what happened to Wazoo and Oregon State out there. They're going to find a conference eventually, and they're going to find a home, I would have to imagine, soon.
Yeah, I think if you take away the financial aspect of like the impact of getting demoted, I think there is some benefits to this, because like Oregon State and Wazoo were never considered like these upper tier Pac-12 teams, even in the Pac-12 conference, who a lot of people already deemed like not this very great, like super top, like super heavy hitter conference. So I think it is a good thing that maybe like Oregon State and them could potentially find a better fitting for themselves in college football, and they could find a place for them where like they are top dogs, because they have the potential to be that, because Oregon State and Wazoo have been competitive. They've had great football players come in and out of their programs, and they could be one of the top tier programs in the group of five every single year. So like, while you may have not been one of those teams in the Pac-12, maybe you can find yourself a place in the group 5 or wherever you want to put yourself in where you can be competitive. Like this year, SMU is joining the ACC. Well, SMU like 30 years ago was one of the best college football teams in all of the land, and then you get the death penalty. But like SMU is probably going to see some growing pains this year in the ACC. They're probably going to see a bit of a down tier compared to what they were doing previously. Like there's going to be these like UCF is another one of these teams that saw that this last year in the Big 12. Like it's just kind of part of climbing up the ladder. And kind of like, again, getting your growing pains in.
Yeah, SMU is a perfect example of this. They joined the AAC in 2013. Their win percentage was at 30%. The first year ranked since 1984 was this year in 2023. Like they've been on an upward climb ever since.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, that might change with the fact that they're joining another big conference. I think the best example of this is Cincinnati. I mean, they joined the Big East in 2005. Their win percentage was at 30. Within 5 years, it was up to 80%. Then you become the Big East becomes the AAC. It goes right down again. Their win percentage in 2017 was at just over 10%. Then they obviously climbed their way back up to get to a New Year's Six Bowl in 2021. Now they've joined the Big 12. Their win percentage is back down to 30. So this idea again that conference alignment leaves teams behind and that's bad. I don't know if it's necessarily bad. It gives teams time to readjust and kind of build yourself back up. Because let's be honest, the big name schools are never going to be the ones, quote, left behind.
Yeah.
Florida State is always going to have a home. The University of Georgia is always going to have a home. Alabama, Oregon, Michigan, Ohio State, all these big name schools are always going to have a home. They're not going to be left behind. Yeah, you are going to have some smaller schools that, you know, when conference realigns and tectonic plates shift and you are standing there in the dust without a home. Yes, that's going to happen, but it also gives plenty of opportunity to climb your way back up.
And I think too, like something a lot of these programs share, and like this probably plays a role into like at the time of promotion, like one reason why you might see like some downward trends is like, for example, like Cincinnati, Luke Fickell helped climb their way up the ladder, like was a phenomenal football coach for them. Well, then Luke Fickell takes a different job and heads out of there. And now you're going into the Big 12 and you have a different head coach. And so like there's growing pains there already. That's a new thing that you have to adjust to on its own. And now you're trying to handle a totally different conference, a conference that's better than what you were in previously. And then also like UCF is an example of this. UCF had Scott Frost for a while, while during his time, like while it wasn't like a whole lot of success that we found it like a couple weeks ago.
Well, they won a national championship.
Yeah, won a national championship, got the Mickey Mouse ring that they so desired and that they deeply wanted. Like again, but he helped like put UCF on this map and gave them a lot of recognition. It probably helped up their win totals quite a bit. And then Scott Frost leaves. He goes on to Nebraska, and now you're stuck with a new head coach. You got Gus Malzahn, who has SEC experience, but again, like bringing in a new head coach, regardless of how much track record they have, regardless of how long they have been in college football, there's just some adjustments to things like that. Like especially for someone like Gus Malzahn, who's been at a program like Auburn for many, many years upon end, and has been like national title contending teams. So now you're going to a place like UCF where you have to recruit differently. Like the product of players that you're trying to get to come to your school is differently. You're going up against a whole new lot of opponents that you're facing every single week. Like that's something you got to get used to. So like, I think that's kind of a trend too. Like when you see these upper climbs, and then also like these sharp downhill climbs like you see with some of these schools.
And also the modern day transfer portal at NIL lets you utilize this to a much better standpoint. Like you can go and get Alabama's third string players that were maybe once 5-star athletes. So it allows for teams to kind of build back quicker, even though, you know, you might be left behind in conference. But one of these teams that is not utilizing the transfer portal has been kind of notorious for doing so. Take a guess who it is.
It wouldn't happen to be old stubborn Dabo Swinney, would it?
That's exactly who it is. So there were 4 teams this year in the transfer portal window that did not take in a single transfer. It was 3 service academies and the Clemson Tigers. So, and I've talked about this before, how I feel like Dabo Swinney gets a lot of flack for this because he's been so voicious about, we're not taking transfers. Clemson, you know, you're Clemson recruited. If you're not with us when you come in, we don't want you. Things such as that. But at this point, Dabo Swinney has kind of made his stance known. It's been known, but you have to respect it, honestly. Like, he's been consistent in that.
Yeah, I mean, again, consistency is something that we like to preach on this show, and Dabo Swinney is by all means consistent as can be when it comes to things like this, and he's remained consistent with the transfer portal. But I mean, we're getting into the same conversation that we've had about Clemson for now, like the last 2 years. Of you either got to adapt to the changes, or you just kind of got, or like you're going to continue to like be on, like keep on trickling down a little bit. And like Clemson, I think is going to be fine moving forward. I don't think he has to worry about like we were just talking about teams that have been demoted. I don't think Clemson has to worry about anything like that. But for the sake of where the program was and for the sake of like Clemson achieving of what they wanted to of like these national titles again, like it's proven upon, like we have examples every single year of teams that dive into the transfer portal, fill needs through the transfer portal, get players that are meaningful contributors that same year that they get them. And those are meaningful contributors that end up helping them succeed and have a lot of success. And in some cases, win national titles. I mean, Georgia has done this. TCU has been an example of this. Florida State came dang near close to making a college football playoff because of a lot of transfers they went and got. So for a team that is as flawed as Clemson, and for a team as flawed as Clemson, who also has lost quite a few NFL contributors on the defensive side of the football this last year, we know what the offensive line looks like. They've recruited. It's been putrid recruiting-wise over there for Clemson the past few years. Like, why are you not taking advantage of something like that? And, you know, if Dabo wants to hang his hat on this and he wants to continue to do it this way, then fine. I guess it's okay. But it's just like I think you're holding yourself back, and I think you just have to kind of accept that if you're a Clemson fan of, we're not going to be able to achieve our goals that we used to want if this is how we continue to run business.
I think a lot of pressure on Dabo Swinney about the transfer portal not being utilized enough would be relieved if he was hitting on his recruiting like he was back in that 2018 era.
Yeah.
Like, you never saw Nick Saban, you never really saw Ryan Day, you never really saw Kirby Smart get flack for like, why aren't we going in the transfer portal and going and getting players? Because the players that they got were homegrown and they developed into stars. Like, there's countless stories of Nick Saban and Kirby Smart doing this. Dabo Swinney hasn't exactly had that track record now. So when you have the opportunity to go in and get a guy who is a proven commodity necessarily and you don't take it, I think that's where the frustration of Dabo Swinney comes in.
Yeah, and I think too, like, even if Dabo wanted to, like, this is what I kind of think about. Now, I find it hard to believe that they aren't, like, dabbling at all into the transfer portal. Like, they're not at least, like, communicating with players, and, like, maybe if a special circumstance were to come to the surface, like, maybe they would jump on top of that. I don't think that they're just, like, turning a blind eye to the transfer portal and saying, like, we don't even think that exists. We don't know what the transfer portal is because we don't use it. Like, we know nothing about it. I don't think they're doing that. But it does make me think, like, even if you wanted to adapt to change, and even if you wanted to start utilizing the transfer portal, like, I don't know how, like, I think reps matter. And so, like, if you're not getting in these reps of, like, how, like, deciding, like, which players you want to take and deciphering, like, which players do we think are a take, like, which players, like, even if we've talked to them, do we not want to take, like, how do we want to fill out this roster with the transfer portal? Like, it's now Dabo Swinney is now like 3 years behind schedule of like every single other program in college football who's been using the portal every single year, to where like it's going to take you probably a couple years even if you ever do decide for it. So I'm interested, like, if there ever is a time, which there will be, I don't know how soon though, of like when Dabo Swinney is not the head coach at Clemson, like how difficult is it going to be for that head coach to like get back into the game of this if Dabo continues on this trek of not using the transfer portal?
I mean, I think it's making it obvious now that he's never really going to do that. Like, that's a hypothetical question that I don't know if we're ever going to have answered, because I just don't think Dabo Swinney's ever going to utilize the transfer portal. But you'd have to imagine it's not too different from recruiting a high school student. Like, like recruiting a college athlete in the transfer portal might be easier than recruiting a high school student. Now, obviously, it's just going to come down to negotiations and what is my, what's the bottom line look like. But I feel like he would be capable of doing it if he tried.
Yeah.
I hear Brooks coming down the stairs, I think.
You think? A special guest? Again, at least he's standing on business when it comes to this, and he's continued to be consistent when it comes to using the transfer portal and not using the transfer portal. But I think we all know that they definitely could have benefited from it.
There he is.
Look at here.
How's it going, man?
A special guest has arrived.
Yeah, an idiot that's been up since 5:15 this morning, and he's drinking coffee at 8:40. So.
Nice.
What's up?
Lovely. We're just talking about Dabo Swinney and the news of him still not using the transfer portal. So that's
he offered a shorter offensive tackle last year.
Yeah,
the only offer he extended in the portal. A 6'5" offensive tackle out of Southeast DeKalb High School. Didn't even know it was, I think it's maybe Southwest DeKalb. Ended up at a shorter university. Started for about 18 months. Was an All-American, and see ya. I think he ended up going to. Somewhere in the Big Ten. Maryland. He ended up at Maryland.
Interesting.
Hey, how you doing, ladies and gentlemen? Buford scrimmage. They got a defensive lineman. He's been there for a while. Perry Wright. Mm-hmm. He's a rising junior. Sometimes I see these guys in state and I'm like, why on earth has Georgia not offered you a scholarship? That's one of those kids. He is the first step quickness off the line of scrimmage, elite.
I'm going to get my stuff ready.
Was the scrimmage inter-squad or was it against?
Yeah, it was Buford versus Norcross.
Okay.
Norcross has got several young defensive backs. Quarterback was playing out of his mind tonight. Their best receiver didn't play. A lot of Buford's guys didn't play. Prolati didn't play. Their 5-star safety or will be 5-star safety didn't play. Their starting quarterback didn't play. So yeah, other than that, I'm back here now. So,
gotcha.
Lovely.
Saw Langston Hughes today though. My God, what a roster! A lot of Georgia interest there too. May or may not have seen 2 Georgia coaches on the sideline over at Langston Hughes.
Lovely. Well, do you want to shift over into?
Yeah. Well, I mean, another guy who hasn't utilized a transfer portal, but for a different reason, maybe necessarily, is Hugh Freeze. So, obviously, everyone knows Auburn's QB situation last year wasn't great. People thought that Auburn might be a player in the transfer portal sweepstakes this year when the quarterbacks hit the portal, and they just never did. They're riding with Peyton Thorne, it looks like, which brought into question, like, why are you doing this? And Hugh Freeze kind of cleared up the air on that today.
Yeah, and this was a question we had going into the spring transfer portal of, like, if there were a team that, or even in the winter portal, like if there ever were a team that maybe would want to get into the QB market, it maybe would be Auburn. But Hugh Freeze today kind of, again, cleared up the air on this, and he said, the options that you're presented with, develop Peyton Thorne, develop Holden, develop Hank, develop Walker, or go spend $1 million on this guy. I just couldn't bring myself to do that because I wanted to put all the pieces together.
All right, so my initial thoughts on this is, did y'all read his comments today? He was on the next round out there in Birmingham where that golf tournament is.
Yeah, I don't think I did see those.
And they were basically asking him about expectations, and they said, is it fair to expect a college football playoff run or something close to it in year 2? And Hugh Freeze was like, whoa, be careful now. Like, I don't think it's fair to put those type of expectations on us. We're going to have to play a lot of young players. And some fans might have listened to that and heard caveats or excuses or whatever you want to make it. But what I heard in the decision through the transfer portal not to take a quarterback, it's not the willingness or unwillingness to pay $1 million. It's not right for their timeline right now.
Right.
They have a 7-5 roster, and $1 million quarterback might make them 9-3. Whoop-de-doo. Let's ask for that $1.5 million for the real meaningful impact quarterback transfer when we actually have a playable roster, a winnable roster.
It's like that meme that you always see of, like, the Lamborghini parked next to the trailer of, like, that's essentially what it would feel like if Auburn went out there and got one of these, like Cam Ward or one of these transfer portal quarterbacks. Is you're like, great, we have a quarterback that can throw it, but the rest of the roster isn't exactly ready for this.
I had to request access.
I got you.
Yeah, I mean, we made comments about it about a couple months back, just about how, after the Texas A&M game, he was like, we got guys open. We just don't have a quarterback to hit them right now.
Yeah.
But I understand the thought process of we'll push our chips in when the roster's ready. Mm-hmm. Also, I understand the value of a program like Auburn developing a high school quarterback. When you're Auburn, Georgia, LSU, Alabama, Ohio State, when you develop an in-house high school quarterback, you never have to worry about that guy leaving you.
Right.
He's going to stay right there until he is draft eligible, and then he will be a first-round draft pick if he's a 3-year starter in the SEC and plays well. It's the Vandy's of the world that have to worry about this. It's the Mississippi States of the world that have to worry about this. Hell, maybe even if a Kentucky had a true freshman out here balling and Ohio State was down bad, maybe they put $2 million in front of his face. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But when you're a program like Auburn or one of these, top 12, top 10 fringe perennial or should be programs, or at least in stature, you never have to worry about one of your in-home grown guys getting poached like that at the quarterback position.
Is he one of the first coaches of this new NIL transfer portal era that kind of came in and wasn't like, we have to win now? Like, it felt like a lot of guys that went to big marquee schools came in and was like, all right, we got to bring in 25 guys from the portal. Everyone kick rocks. Like, we're gonna break this up, blow this up, and build a new team from scratch here. He seems like he hasn't done that.
Maybe just hasn't been openly brash about it. But he changed a lot of things when Harsin left.
For sure.
I think they had 18 or 19 guys exit in that one December window.
Right.
But I don't see the value when you're building your culture and when you're building your program off of high school recruiting. There's no reason to churn your roster over with transfer portal guys just to take a C- roster and turn it into a C+ roster. Mm-hmm. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's very clear to me through the moment he got on campus and started really pushing in recruitments like KJ Bolden. I know where you're going to spend your money. You clearly have a timeline. They have told you you're safe for an extended period of time. You're free to to take your time to build this the quote unquote right way, which we all know is through high school recruiting. Like when you develop good recruiting habits and you perennially recruit well, you're going to win football games in this conference. I don't know if that's true everywhere else, but it seems to be true everywhere else. Ohio State recruits really, really well. Michigan developed really, really well under Jim Harbaugh, kept everybody in-house, things like that. So to win at a really, really high level, you got to build it from the ground up.
He's one of these guys where...
By the way, I still don't have access to that.
I sent you a different link.
Okay, you're good.
So he's one of these guys to me that kind of feels like Auburn's window to win a title isn't opened yet. And he's kind of being patient with him. But there's one guy in Florida whose window is apparently wide open right now, according to his governor. Have you seen this?
What are you talking about?
So Ron DeSantis said that, this is Florida's opportunity to win a national title right now since Nick Saban retired.
Because Nick Saban?
Yeah.
Boy, he putting a lot of pressure on that coach he fitting to fire.
Yeah, it's bad, dude.
Well, he ain't fitting to fire him, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, the quote was, he was talking about, he said, I was driving past some of the academic superlatives, but I was driving in and we drove past the swamp, DeSantis said. Nick Saban has retired from Alabama, so this is the window to have the Gators. I know Georgia's still very tough. It's a tough league, I get it. But I saw those national championships back in the day, and it was a great run, and basketball too. So basically, now that Nick Saban's retired, it's full speed ahead for Florida to win the national title. Where is
man's on a stump giving college football opinions? Where is this at? And why? Who asked Ronnie D his thoughts on the Florida Gator program?
That's a great question.
Lord.
Maybe nobody asked him. Maybe he just wanted to give them.
That is kind of a softball question to ask your governor. They're like, hey, let's get him on the good side of things. Just like, hey, what do you think about Florida football?
What you think about their Gators, man? Well, Miami's here too, and Florida State's here too. I mean, why the preference to Florida?
I guess he just wants to see him win. He wants to see the state succeed.
Weird comment.
What if we got...
But anyways, we're going to come back to this. This is a lot of pressure on Billy, even more. Your governor's out here saying that you should be winning natties.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Not that these claims are filled with a lot of base.
Yeah, and then between Steve Spurrier's comments and now this, like you're talking about two very high-known people in the state of Florida, like both people are kind of saying like, oh, it's now or never. Like that certainly puts a lot of pressure on your shoulders, and it makes everybody else feel like and know that everybody kind of feels like it's now or never for Billy Napier and the Florida Gators. And if something doesn't happen now, then it's time to again shake things up, start from scratch, and get someone else in.
I think he's probably one of the few coaches I've seen in my lifetime where just like the last 2 years, been like, there's no way this guy makes it out alive.
I mean, he's only been there 2 years. This is year 3, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but even after year 1, it was like it's going to be such an uphill battle from like after Anthony Richardson left, is like you went out and got Graham Mertz. There wasn't a whole lot to do there. It was like you just kind of saw it happen. Like you could feel the spiraling like from the first time he stepped on, which is weird.
The feeling is that this will when it opens. This is way too early for this conversation, but this might be a Lane Kiffin opportunity. Just gonna throw that out there.
Where'd that come from?
Just
intuition.
Yeah, we'll call it that. Tea leaf intuition.
It's hard for me to picture Lane Kiffin in Florida Gator gear.
It's not hard for me to picture Lane Kiffin recruiting in the state of Florida, though.
No, that's absolutely fair.
I would be. He wouldn't be having to be transfer portal with the Florida Gators.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
He is doing what Deion's trying to do at an elite level. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Deion is churning the roster over year in and year out through the transfer portal, as is Lane. But Lane's doing it with Walter Nolan. Yeah, a little bit different.
It is interesting, like how it has kind of just, which
and
again,
Tay
like
Harris and Antoine Wells and Jackson Dart.
There's so many like there's other exterior factors to this, but like how it feels like it's just kind of been a lagging product, and for the Florida Gators, like a program who's like in the heart of Florida, who's right in the center of like some of the most pristine talent in the country. It's taken them a while to just like figure things out, find the right guy, really get things going when like everything is already there. Like you feel like everything that you need to succeed is already there. Like you just got to find the right guy. And like time and time again, they just have failed to find the right person. And again, like that has to do with other factors, like there being a Nick Saban in college football, Georgia being the upper tier program in the SEC for the last 7 years. Like those things matter and those things are a difference, but it seems like it shouldn't have taken this long for things to get going.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like you've failed to find the right guy 4 times now. I mean, after Urban Meyer left, there hasn't been really a coach that's done anything for them, with the exception of Dan Mullen in 2020.
Look, I'm not privy to Florida Gator football history, but it's Steve Spurrier, it's Urban Meyer, and then it's a bunch of 7 and 5.
Yeah, that's about right.
Can you stat reference me right here before we get absolutely flamed? But those are two legendary football coaches that, by the way, didn't just win at Florida. Like, Steve Spurrier is the all-time winningest coach of South Carolina, and Urban Meyer obviously won a national title with Ohio State. Like, it wasn't just Florida. It was those two guys in particular that were very special football coaches. But I mean, that predates it all the way back to the mid-90s. So we're talking about the last 30 years of college football that they've gone basically 2 for 6 in coaching hires. Is what you're talking. No, it's more than that, because they didn't go straight from Spurrier to Meyer, did they? Either way, this is what happens when we go off script with an entire history of a football program 30 years deep.
Unbelievable, but they weren't world beaters in the early 2000s.
No, they were not. What do you got?
So it's more like 8 and 5. It's like
8 and 4, 8 and 5.
Yeah, like they've had that record. Like they've had 8 or less wins like 12 different times since 2000.
Okay.
So then, why is Florida looked at as such a prestigious job then?
It's proximity to talent. It's the 5-hour radius we talk about all the time on this channel. And I feel so goofy even talking about this. The quotes are right in the sense that Nick Saban's gone. That applies to everybody in college football. Newsflash. The real talking point, and the one that make it go, is the fact that Florida State and Miami have been down for so long. And Florida State's just now climbing back. Miami's just now spending money at the right rate to where they can recruit at a high level. So your window has now closed in your state to really hammer down all the elite prospects down there. So that's become more competitive. While Nick Saban's gone, but that's an opening for everybody in the sport. The window has closed in that state for their ability to just lock it down. It's all coming to Florida.
Yeah, I think too, like, it's kind of a disservice to everybody else just to say like, oh, Nick Saban's gone. Like it's anybody's picking. Like anybody, it's open for anybody. Like all we do now is we just take the next one and we place him in that position, and we have like another like handful of programs that are battling for that top spot. Like it's not like the field is completely reset. Everybody's on level playing ground. Everybody's starting from scratch. Like now it's a race to the top. Like you already have programs that are already at the top. They just fill the void of like, it may not be Nick Saban and all of his national titles or anything like that, but there's other really good football programs that aren't going anywhere. So it's not like Florida just gets to like potentially plug themselves into that in this year, you know?
If Nick Saban were the head football coach at Alabama right now, would Georgia still be the favorite to win the conference and the title?
Probably.
So the window hasn't changed.
Yeah.
The team to beat is, I mean, there's just one less of them at that elite top end, like nostalgic, can we beat this monster of the Midway type shit.
Yeah. I mean, that also comes with the fact that Alabama's reputation preceded it before Georgia did. Like Georgia's only been elite for a few seasons now. Like Alabama had a whole decade's run of where they were the top team in college football almost unanimously. So it makes sense as to why someone who might not be an expert, have their finger on the exact pulse of college football, be like, hey, Nick Saban's going, this is the perfect time for us to win national titles. But
all right, so of this show sheet I'm looking at right now, I'm assuming y'all have already talked about Brian Kelly.
Yeah, we did.
Did y'all already talk about Boise State?
We did.
Okay.
I think we've talked about
tied the two together. I want to just comment on the Brian Kelly thing. I thought Brian Kelly tried to say what the Boise State coach said, like really, really well. And by the way, Brian Kelly is not the only like really high level SEC football coach that thinks, acts, and talks this way. He just don't do it in front of a microphone. You know what I'm saying? They just don't do it in front of a microphone. So yeah, this whole idea of we're not in the business of buying players, like that motto and that mantra is not just applied at LSU. He's just the only one that got in front of a microphone and said it at this time of the year, by the way. Right. Which ain't shit going on, ain't nothing happening. So guess what led every single college football discussion this week? Brian Kelly. Okay. He also had this happen to him when he first got that job with the family thing. Yeah. It was like, it wasn't shit going on except for let's all collectively laugh at Brian Kelly.
That's what we were talking about at the start of this, is basically like Brian Kelly. I agree with mostly what he's saying. Like I get it. I respect that. But the problem with Brian Kelly is just every message that he delivers automatically, because it's coming out of Brian Kelly's mouth, people are people want to hate it instantly, and they look for ways to hate it. And I think that what he said wasn't necessarily said effectively. I don't think he should have said, we're not in the mix of buying players. We're not. He probably should have gone with bidding war, like Jay Will goes.
Yeah.
Like, I think saying we're not going to get into a bidding war for transfer portal players would go over much better than saying we're not going to buy players.
Yeah, because you are.
Because obviously, obviously every college football team has to buy players to some extent. Now, you're not going to pay them millions of dollars like some of these schools are willing to go out and do, but you're also not going to just say, no, you're not getting a single dime from us.
Also, I believe these comments were about or they weren't directly about him. They didn't reference him, but it was pretty well known they were in the market for a defensive tackle. Like, it seemed like half of college football was this spring.
Right.
They were in the market for the TCU defensive tackle in particular, and hosted him on an official visit, and they went viral for his official visit. Did y'all see the videos of this? No. They're in a local restaurant or club, and they did the whole thing like here in Atlanta in the clubs where you order bottle service, and they bring over a lit sign with a bunch of fireworks coming out of it, and it says "Happy Birthday so and so," or will you say yes or whatever. They had Buddy's name and did a whole thing in the club and did this whole massive OV. And my question is either your intel is bad or you got sour grapes on the back end when you got outbid for a prospect that you thought you were going to get. And what do I mean by that? Your intel is obviously bad because if you're not into buying players, you should have known he was out of your market range. Why would you host him on an official visit if you weren't able to, quote unquote, buy him? These guys all have agents. They all have representatives. All you had to do is ask. Or B, you did try to buy him and you got way, way, way outbid, and you go on, in front of an interview and you say, we're not in the business of buying players. Well, yeah, you are. You acquire players all the time. Matter of fact, I would say nowadays, 3/4 of your high school class is not free. Once they get there, they have been promised some type of pay for play. They've been promised some type of NIL endorsement package. That you have purchased those assets right there. So don't do this. We're not in the business of buying players. Newsflash, everyone's buying them. You just probably got outbid for this one, which that's what that is. But let's do this. We're not in the business of being in a bidding war. We're not going to be out here, disproportionately giving out money to a player that isn't properly valuing themselves on the market.
Yeah, we mentioned to talk about because he was specifically talking about interior defensive linemen for this portal window. That was one of the few positions there's some significant players in there.
Charlotte Condon hit a home run.
We need a live ticker of that just on the show.
34.
Absolutely insane.
Boys hitting dingers.
As per usual.
The stat sheet is loaded, as is the show.
Correct.
Did y'all tell the folks that it was a loaded show?
We did. We gave a shout out to our friends.
All the points.
Told them where they could make some good investments.
Shout out to PP.
Oh, yeah?
Didn't say that, but did say prize.
I'm still waiting on my big purple helmet. Still waiting on
I don't know if we're ever going to get that.
I don't either.
It looked good, though.
I put in a request. Denied.
They denied it?
No, I haven't heard, but no news is bad news when it comes to requests.
Fair.
Indeed.
Well, I think that's about all we've got for the national.
Oh, we got a local hour though.
We got a local hour.
Oh, we got a whole local hour. I'm excited for it. Let's get after it.
Welcome into Talk the Dog, the show where we find a bone to pick and a take to give. These are not hot takes. These is dog takes. Can I talk that dog?
What's up? You really like that?
Let's shut up and grind some tape.
All righty, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back in to another loaded hour. As your boy puts on his lav mic, we do indeed have a loaded local hour, as I just told you. But we're going to do thoughts from the trail real quick because I saw a couple of really, really good football players again today and yesterday. Yesterday, I finished the day over at Eastside High School, went to Newton as well. Newton's got a 2027 safety, Adrian Cole. Just remember the name. He's already 6'2.5". He's already 190 pounds, and he's going to be a guy. So there's that. And then I went to Eastside to see Christian Gass. He has taken an official visit to the University of Georgia May 31st. I think he's in that first group, that first window. It's going to come down to Georgia, Florida, Kentucky, and Southern Cal. And I believe Tennessee is going to get an OV there as well. 6'3", 215 pounds, runs like a deer, looks like he would fit in very well with that avatar-like linebacker room at the University of Georgia. Glenn Schumann really heavy in and on that one. We'll see what happens and where that one ends up. I think, if I were to have to really, you were to nail me down right now, I would say it's either going to be Georgia or it's going to be Kentucky, is what it feels like. Kentucky did an incredible job. Came down and saw him once, had one visit with him up there as well, and just immediately hit it off with him. So there's that. Kentucky's a major play. And by the way, Kentucky, sneaky linebacker school. Puts one out in the league every 2 years. Every 2 years or so, top 60 pick type dude. Sneaky good linebacker school. And then let's see, this morning we were at Gainesville. Gainesville has a 2026 edge rusher, Xavier Griffin. He's gonna be a top 32 eval kid, 5-star, checks every physical box you could ever imagine, and guess what? Has since he was 14 years old. I'm very interested to see what happens with him this year, because I think he's finally kind of growing into, they're kind of playing him at Jack over at Gainesville. He's going to play off ball inside linebacker, I think, in college, because I don't know if his frame's ever going to hold 245, 250 like some of these edge rushers nowadays do. NFL edge rushers 265, 270. So I think he's going to go to off-ball linebacker and run like a deer and hunt the ball and shed blocks, do everything really, really well at that position. Alex Payne, the left tackle, is committed to North Carolina. 6:30 in the morning practice. North Carolina had 5 football coaches there. I don't think they want to lose that guy, because I don't think there was another player on that field North Carolina is legitimately recruiting. It was just, we're going to let Alex Payne know that we love Alex Payne. So there's that. They have a rising sophomore offensive tackle. He's blowing up lately. His name's Tyler Ford. I met Tyler Ford when he was 13 years old at a Born to Compete Awards Gala I host every year, or help Alex Benson, co-host. It's his event. I help him out on stage there. But saw Alex Ford again. I saw him last year as a freshman at Gainesville. Obviously wasn't going to get on the field. He was an 8th grader rising freshman in the spring. Now he's a 9th grader rising 10th grader in high school. Body has, as you would expect, just developed tremendously over the last 12 months. Can't wait to see what it's ultimately going to be. There's SEC O's already in. I think Texas A&M popped yesterday, and one other SEC school, maybe Kentucky. Georgia's obviously on the radar or is aware over there. So that brings me to this afternoon over at Langston Hughes. We're going to watch Donnie Glover's tape, because I think Donnie Glover's going to find his way in this 2025 offensive line class. I just got a feeling. So there's that. We're going to watch that. And he's 6'4", maybe 310. Doesn't look like the rest of the room. The rest of the room's 6'6", 335. You know what I mean? They're monsters nowadays at Georgia. This is more of a squatted product, if you will, in their standards. He's a huge human, don't get me wrong. But he's been a very, very, very clean, technically sound, violent, efficient, tough, guaranteed, really, really good football player since he was a freshman that he started at Langston Hughes. You start at Langston Hughes as a true freshman, you a guy. All right. This is a guy. I'm excited to watch the tape with you guys tonight. They also have a right tackle over there. I'm going to blank on his name right now. Wears glasses. He is violent. I think both of them are 400-plus pound bench pressers.
Good God.
And Travis Dice is his name. And Travis has got 34-inch arms at least. So you putting up 4 bills with 34-inch arms in high school, you're strong. Yeah. They have a 2026 tight end over there that if I had to bet, one of these cameras, he's probably going to pop a Georgia offer within a week. So there's that.
Fascinating.
Donnie Glover tape.
Let's do it.
Oh man.
How are your feet today?
My feet are fine today, because there was about a 5-hour break between the work day today. It was Gainesville this morning at 6:30, and then it was back at the crib to do some work, and then at about 2:30 we jetted down to Southwest Atlanta to see Langston, and then we drove to Buford to check out that we'll call it a scrimmage. Scrimmage. All right, who we got? Donnie Glover. He is right there. If I had to put money on it. Oh, left tackle. Oh. I bet we're going to see some finishing today.
It's against Harrison, it looks like.
The Hoyas. Shout out. Is this sophomore tape?
I can't remember what it's. I don't think it actually said.
Because that's Bo Hewley playing right tackle. Bo Hewley's at Georgia now. So that's got to be sophomore tape. Let's see. I'm not judging you. I'm not. Yeah, it's from 2022.
I thought I clicked newest.
You're good, bro. That's all he's got.
Yeah.
He's got 2-year-old tape.
That's what I thought.
Man, that's not good. It's not good for show purposes just right now.
It isn't.
All right, close that out. That's on us. That's what happens when we freelance. So let me give you, I gave you a little bit of the in-person eval. I think as a freshman, he got his first offer was Ole Miss.
Pretty good.
As a 15-year-old.
Jeez.
And he's only gotten better since then. Here's the weird thing. Here's why things cooled off, I think. He didn't have the greatest Under Armour camp. He didn't. Okay. But the in-person eval and the actual, because college coaches have tape. They don't have highlight tapes. They get to call coach and they have a huddle access to where if they want to watch Langston Hughes versus Creekside and they want to watch all 4 quarters, they can sit down and watch all 4 quarters. Okay. His tape from last year is really, really good. Didn't have the greatest Under Armour camp, so things kind of died down. I think things are going to pick up tremendously, particularly with the University of Georgia. And the good news, Georgia hasn't really signed anybody that they know, for sure, can play center. This might be one of those guys. They're also obviously looking at Cortez Smith over at Parkview, who I haven't had a chance to get to see, but I've seen the guy a dozen times since because he's been a guy since he was 14 years old as well. So there you go. Those are thoughts from the trail. Tomorrow we might take the day off. Yeah, we might take the day off because Saturday we're going to go to McIntosh High School and Westlake. I got a tight end to see over at McIntosh, and obviously Westlake's got a bunch of dudes. Juan Gaston and Travis Smith Jr. most notable.
So it sounds like a lot of dudes.
So you mentioned a bad day at the Under Armour. So if you do have just because everybody has bad days, maybe just one day you ain't feeling it or something's not going right or whatever. Does one bad day at one of those events really kind of hurt you sometimes? Is
the bad day combined with a bad day of testing as well? Because if that's the case, then here's why it's such a strong evaluation point. For the first real time, you're facing another dude. That guy across from you is going to play in college, no doubt about it. Where I go watch you in high school, and I was talking to a coach about this today. He was like, it's so funny because I go watch one guy at one school, and I'm like, man, I freaking love this guy. And then I go watch another guy, and I'm like, damn, this guy stinks. And then I go watch another guy, and I'm falling in love and hating guys as I see them. But what if I put them on the same field? Would my feelings feel any different? And he came to me, he's like, that's why we ask everybody to come to camp. That's why we need you to come to camp. Because as a scout, as an evaluator, the only thing that's going to make me feel safe is if I can 100% at my best ability know that at least he's facing good competition and doing things that we're going to ask him to do when he gets here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. I was just curious about that.
But this spring window is very different for these coaches, and most of them are I wouldn't say most. Like most things, I would say about 50% of them are following the rules with regards to the evaluations. UNC was supposed to only be there today. I would imagine they haven't been there at all at Gainesville, very popular area. A lot of people in there all the time. So I would imagine they follow the rules. That's probably why they sent 5 guys there. We don't want to just send the offensive line coach to our most stealable recruit right now is Alex Payne from North Carolina, I would imagine. He is a guy that you talk about Under Armour tape. Look like a ready to go. I mean, you got to put 30 pounds on the guy when he gets to college, no matter what, or 20 pounds at least. But physically, technically, clean as a whistle. Let's go. So yeah, that was one of those guys. Obviously, I've been to Walton. Jude Cascone is the tight end that got an offer today. That had the whole scouting world going crazy. what is Georgia seeing Jude Cascone? Because like Jude's a good football player, but Jude, I think it might be a PWO type deal, maybe. But good football player, but not like Elias Williams.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I got you.
I can't wait to see Elias Williams. I cannot wait. To see Elias Williams.
Is he the player you're most excited to see on this trip? Or
Probably left. I want to see all the Calvary kids. Thomas Blackshear. I got to get their contact information. If anybody in the Savannah area listens, I need a bunch of contacts down there. So please hit me up. There's that, or I'll just call my buddy Jeremy Johnson, who is the plug. My boy Jeremy Johnson. Just say, hey, you got a contact here? Yeah, don't worry about it. Right there.
Good friend
so
to
that's
have.
my guy right there. Oh, great friend to have if you do what I do. He just does it better than I do in terms of covering the recruiting stuff. I'm when it comes to game, I'll call game. Jeremy is a much better recruiting reporter than I am. Probably the best in the industry.
He's really good work.
Yeah, he works really, really hard.
Well,
where were we at?
You were talking about the thoughts on trails, but I'm glad we were talking about recruiting because I think it plays right into this next segment that we have. Megatron made some interesting comments. Not the Transformer. Calvin Johnson made some interesting comments about his visit to Georgia and ultimately why he decided to go to Georgia Tech as opposed to Georgia. And supposedly it all had to do with how things went down on his visit.
See, if I had been doing my show notes like I would have normally, I would have had the perfect transition there because I had a coach compare Elias Williams to Calvin Johnson today.
Oh man,
that's on me. That's on me, dude. I didn't know where you were going, but smooth transition nonetheless.
Oh well, thank you. But yeah, he was on the Pivot, right? That's the podcast. He was on.
Ryan Clark and them boys.
He was on there and he was talking about how his visit went down at UGA, and he sets a scene of like how he's on this visit. He doesn't mention any names because he says if he did, then this person would be very heavily hated. But so he sets that he gets like dropped down somewhere, like obviously on UGA's campus, but it's like somewhere there he's not very familiar with, and basically they do a night on the town and the people he with just ends up getting slap drunk, and it just a very weird feeling. Like he was not vibing with it at all, and it just gave him a very weird feeling of like, this probably doesn't want to be where I want to go because this is how I'm getting treated. Like I feel like I'm just kind of on the back burner here, like I'm just like a side piece to a party on the town. So I just interesting comments of like a party, like don't take them downtown, I guess.
All right, first thought. If it sounded like Buddy that was hosting him just kind of dismissed him and was like, here, and just kind of dropped him off somewhere.
You ain't going to ruin my plans.
And went and dipped his own and did his own thing. So first thing I immediately think of, a wide receiver definitely hosted that visit. You know what I'm saying? This was like, ain't no way Buddy's coming here. He's about to have the worst time. You know what I'm saying? Like, Calvin Johnson was a known guy. Sandy Creek High School, I looked it up today. He's number 5 overall. I think he was the 5th overall wide receiver in that class. And he was like, yeah, my face exactly when I saw it. I was like, damn, y'all are not good. Y'all were not good back at that day. Because 6'5", 220, run like a deer. Sandy Creek was like one of the state's best programs at that time in high school football. So like, how'd you miss on that one? Anyways, it had to be a receiver that hosted this man. You don't think it was?
Because there's a separate article that was written a couple years ago that.
Oh, you did research.
Yeah, DJ Shockley
too.
Quote, I lost Calvin Johnson. That one haunts us for years. He's talking about how, being
I was about to text Shock.
The difficulty of being a host for recruits. So it looks like it might have been Shock that was hosting Calvin Johnson.
So this recruitment would have been what year? Like this was probably like
2003, maybe 2004.
No, he was a 2005 commit, or he was 2005 class. So this would have been official visit time that fall. Yeah, that would have been 2004.
So Shock's like, dang, man, I ain't going to get to use them, I guess. Like, what the heck? Like, I'm at the end of my career. I don't know. I don't want to put it in ill will to DJ Shock.
You know what? We might have to get Shock on.
We got to get the deets on this.
There's allegations, my man. We need you to come on.
Yeah, because I don't know. That's
allegations that you fumbled Calvin Johnson.
Also, it definitely seemed like I'm not even guessing here. It is the truth because he owns his own marijuana business. But it sounded like Reggie Ball smoked some dope with him, and Georgia folks got him hammered, and he liked smoking dope.
Yeah. Alcohol is definitely more prevalent in Athens than, there's definitely a lot of weed in Athens, but it's an alcohol city.
Yeah, definitely.
Notoriously a booze city.
For sure.
For sure.
You know, it's funny because like everybody gives the stat of like, oh, they got the most bars per square mile than any other city, and like you can't verify that info anywhere. Like
It's because it's in like 2 blocks. There's like 40 bars in like 4 blocks.
Yeah.
it's very hard to verify. That's what I'm saying. Like, if you try and find sources for it, like, I think it was just like, they definitely got the most. Like, we're just going to give it to them. Like, we don't need to send anybody out there to verify that. Like, we'll just give it to Athens because it's definitely them, whatever.
But no, that's a crucial miss. But, I mean, if he's going to go anywhere at that time, let him go play with Reggie Ball.
At least in this scenario, like, you quickly followed that up with AJ Green. So like you had someone that like
for like 3 years later.
Yeah, but like what I'm getting at is like, you know, when you miss Devontae Smith,
yeah,
didn't really follow that up with anybody after that one. That one, like, there's bad taste.
Took a while for George Pickens.
Absolutely. And, you know, for this scenario, like, at least, like, you didn't know this at the time of, like, how the visit went and whatnot, but, like, at least, like, 3 years later, you got, like, a very, very good, one of the best wide receivers to come to your college.
Yeah, I mean, it is an interesting story to hear about how, you know, it's wild to think about players not liking the city of Athens when they come, because that's one of the things that everyone talks about, how much they love Athens. So it is interesting.
Where was he at in the middle? He said it felt like it was the projects. He said that about Athens. Where was he at where he felt
north
like
side of Athens is sketchy?
I know that, but like,
I don't know
why would a player take him somewhere? He said the dorms at the time looked like the projects.
I don't know what downtown Athens looked like at this time.
In 05,
Yeah,
04?
I don't know what that looked like.
Maybe Chad can help us out there. But I don't think Athens has ever looked like terrible. Maybe at least campus. I've taken jogs through Clark County. I understand.
Yeah,
It can go downhill very quickly.
Very, very, very.
yeah, it's a weird city. Like, you'll drive around, you're like, oh, these are $1 million homes, and then take a left and it's government housing. Like,
Yeah.
it's very interesting, the city of Athens. So, but nonetheless, I mean, I think at this point, it's one of those things where it's like, damn, but it's 20 years ago now.
Yeah.
Like, you can't be salty about not having Calvin Johnson, especially the trajectory those two programs have gone on since then.
Yeah.
Like, it's just one of those things where it's like, damn, that would have been nice, but I don't think it's a colossal miss anymore.
Plus, too, I know that, like, I don't know if it was like an ESPN documentary that they did, but I remember watching a documentary about Calvin Johnson, and when he talked about his recruitment, he also mentioned that his mom was very, very, very adamant that she wanted him to not only go to a good school with great degrees and everything like that, but she also wanted to make sure that he finished college. And so, like, I'm pretty sure that she also felt like Georgia Tech was a better school for him to go to as opposed to UGA. And that he made it seem like it played a major role in his decision as well. But this is a good story to laugh at nonetheless.
Moving on to some more interesting takes that people get.
You guys graduate this week, right?
Yeah,
We did great.
we did convocation yesterday and big graduations tomorrow.
On Stanford.
Congratulations, boys.
Thanks, man.
What was what's your takeaway from journalism school?
I learned a lot of stuff there. I think I definitely got some skills that would not have gotten anywhere else.
Yeah.
The field work that they allow you to do at that program is really good. I think that's probably the biggest thing is you actually get to go out and do actual reps.
You get a lot of in-person experience, that's for sure, and you get to learn a lot of different things. I think that if you want it to work the way that you want it to, you just have to make sure that I diversified myself. I took a lot of different classes that had nothing to do with sports, had nothing to do with like the career that I'm going into, but like making sure that you diversify yourself and you get put into different situations. It's fun.
Because I mean, let's be honest, like the act of learning journalism isn't that hard when it comes to textbook stuff. Like there's only you basically learn AP style, and after that you're pretty much good to go. It's the in-field work that you do where you go out and meet sources and
How to do the job.
how to do the job is more important. So actually going out and doing it.
It's not about writing articles. Journalism, that's the final product.
Yeah.
It's the actual journalism is collecting the information to write the article.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know nothing about that. I got 2 degrees. None of them start with a J.
You do pretty good work though.
You think so?
I would say so.
Yeah, we're all
I think it
right.
worked out.
All right, we figured it out. Just a good old fashioned Division II degree.
Hey, nothing wrong with that.
No,
Before we
not at
do move on, though, we probably do need to shout out UGA softball for that game last night.
Yeah, it was 14th inning.
14th inning. One of the crazy stats from the game is Madison Kerpix, I believe is how you pronounce her name. I guess she's kind of had like a rough go of things over the last couple outings for her, but she went 6 innings without allowing a hit or a run all the way until the 14th inning, and then they hit the 3-run bomb to put themselves up. But yeah, hitting 2 home runs in the bottom of the 14th inning and then one of them being a walk-off, like, that's good stuff right there. You said
They were back to back.
I don't know. They weren't back to back.
They were presented in the social clip as if they were back to back.
The first one happened with no outs, runners on first and second, and then the other one was with 2 outs. And
Just ding a city.
Ding a city, baby.
Second one grazed the tip of the glove.
Yeah, could have been robbed.
First one. Just a moonshot.
Yeah, that one's gone.
Just a dinger. Huh?
Jenny Kearney, the one who hit the 3-run homer, is insane.
Yeah. Them girls be hitting them softballs nowadays, man.
For real, dude.
You said that the tournament got pushed back now?
Yeah, I think they had a rain delay, so the game's Friday morning now against Florida.
Where do they play the tournament?
That's a great question. I don't know.
Couldn't tell you.
I saw a clip of a Florida news reporter reporting outside of the stadium where they're playing the tournament.
Yeah.
And he's trying to do his hit. Some dog fan come by. In the middle of his hit. He's like, what the? And he turns around. He's like, oh, hey, man. Damn. Sorry.
Now we know why people always talk so badly about Georgia fans barking. It scares them.
It's hilarious.
I wish it would have went viral. It should have went viral.
It should have. That sounds like something that should have gone viral.
It was hysterical.
That's great.
One of another things going viral right now is this Brock Bowers thread's coming out. Have you seen this?
Huh?
So apparently, allegedly, and it's hard to talk about this because it is my NFL team, but allegedly Brock Bowers' decision to be drafted came down to a coin flip.
All right. So I'm going to let you tell the story, but I have a clear theory on how this went down.
Yeah. So I think we all kind of see past it. But basically what happened was Terry Arnold, I don't know where this interview came from.
It was the dadgummit. I can find it in the article, Rick.
But basically he was talking about the draft process and everything, talking about how the Raiders contacted him and told him that they essentially, when at the 13th pick, it came down to, are we going to draft Terry Arnold or Brock Bowers? And the decision was so hard to make that the Raiders organization told Terry Arnold that they made a coin flip to decide who it was. And obviously it landed on Brock Bowers, and so they drafted him.
The next round show. That's what who the interview was with.
They get pretty exclusive interviews with Terry and have since he was in college. That's the same show he said the Lad McConkey thing on.
Ah, gotcha.
So here's how this happened. Antonio Pierce clearly called him and was like, hey, man, it was a coin flip. You were Bowers. And he took that shit literally. That's clearly how this went down.
I love how he said, and it landed on Bowers. Like,
I mean, did he ask Coach, was I heads?
Yeah, like everybody. Yeah. Do you believe the conspiracy that heads is always the best answer because
no, tails never
the
fails.
Weight distribution?
No, tails never fails.
Tails
it
never
rhymes.
fails.
It must work. Period.
I've always been a heads guy.
Yeah, I mean, were you ever a captain though?
Well, we don't flip a coin on the basketball court.
You're right.
We do it like men and we tip it off. It's 50-50.
You're like men and go tip to tip.
That is true. What?
No comment.
I'm not even gonna acknowledge that one.
Yeah, I when I wrote the article today, I like put a paragraph in. I was like, it does seem a little funny to envision an NFL organization in a draft room literally taking a coin, flipping it, and saying like, there's our guy. Like, probably not the thing you want to be hearing about your NFL organization, but probably.
I don't buy it. My Raiders did not do that, dude.
I think they ran well.
Yeah.
They'll be
now.
fine.
I mean, Des Bryant says that Brock Bowers is going to be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, Des Bryant came out and said, basically, I think he's a future Hall of Famer, which, what does a Hall of Fame career look like if you're Brock Bowers?
I proposed this question because, like, you know, quarterbacks always get special treatment because there's always this big, like, conversation about, like, what do you have to do? What boxes do you have to check to become a Hall of Famer at this position? For quarterbacks, you got to break records, but you got to have a ring. That's kind of what everybody says you need from the position, whether you agree with that or not. Like, that's what the football fans say that is required for you to be a Hall of Famer at the quarterback spot. You're shaking your head, and I'm in agreement with you on that one.
As a position player, it's 12-year career, 9 years at the peak. Like play for 12 years, be the best or one of the best at your position for 9 years or 10.
So I mean, yeah, because that's
a decade of dominance. You're in the NFL Hall of Fame.
Well, what I did is I got Tony Gonzalez, who is going to be or is a Hall of Fame tight end. Did 17 years in the NFL. Did 5 years with the Falcons.
14 over 1,000 though.
Yeah.
Out of that 17?
Yes, without a doubt. Or he wasn't putting up 1,000 career receiving yards.
Yeah, I don't think he was elite at KC.
He won 1,000.
He had 1, 2, 3, 4 of them.
Okay.
But over his career, he had over 15,000 receiving yards, 111 touchdowns.
He also played in the era of tight ends where they weren't that predominantly used. Yeah. Like this is before Gronk and even like Aaron Hernandez and Antonio Gates. Like the tight end was like your sixth lineman at this point.
You're 100% right.
Yeah, absolutely. And then people
traditional inline tights.
Yeah, I think Tony Gonzalez ran like a 4.6 40 for this NFL combine, which at the time was probably like, whoa,
holy shit, this guy's
holy
an animal.
Cow, this guy is insane. He's got the burners, baby. So I think that assuming that Brock Bowers does last like at least 10 years in the NFL, do we think he could get to that 15,000 yard mark? I mean, there's always these other factors that play a role in, like if he has Aiden O'Connell as his quarterback for the next 10 years.
10 years?
Probably not going to work out. And well, I guess he might be doing something right if he's the quarterback for the next 10 years. But you get what I'm saying. Like quarterback has to play a role and whatnot.
Oh, you were shaking your head at 10 years of Aiden O'Connell.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, that's rough stuff.
I mean, 10 years of Gardner Minshew's pushing it.
3 years of Gardner Minshew's pushing it.
Yeah. That stash gets old very quickly when you start.
But the vibes don't, baby.
No, you're right.
Don't.
Right.
It's going to be a fun year, dude. I'm excited.
It'll be a good time, bro.
Which rookie do you think out of this class for Georgia has the biggest season?
I think Ladd has an opportunity to rack it up.
People are really high on Ladd.
Well, it's just because they have nothing at weaponry-wise.
Yeah, I mean,
It's like him and Buddy from TCU.
He's wide receiver 1 right now, isn't he?
Quentin Johnston.
Quinn Johnson's wide receiver 1.
No, you're right. I forgot about that.
He'll play a role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think immediately.
I think Kamari has the opportunity to have a major season, though, because his play style is so tailor-made for the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
Like, obviously, his ball skills aren't the most elite and things such as that. And he didn't test super well, which is probably why he wasn't a first-round pick at the end. But I think Kamari Lassiter's play style allows for him to be just an elite NFL player.
Plus, I mean, what benefits Kamari is you also get to play alongside Derek Stingley. Like you get those two guys playing on the same football field, both corners. Not only do the Houston Texans, are they going to end up benefiting from that, assuming that Kamari is going to be the other starter for them, but like that also benefits Kamari as well. I mean, they benefit one each other. You kind of play off
sure
of
he's
that.
playing outside?
I have no idea.
They drafted him to play nickel?
They might put him in the slot. But this is the weird thing about
A lot
being...
of talk about immediately doing that already. I tweeted about it. I mean, the NFL draft coverage tables, both channels immediately were like, well, here's a nickel. Here's a day one starter at the nickel position on the NFL level. And I'm like, buddy, did y'all not watch the last 2 years of tape? Like, Mans has got 2 straight years, did not miss a football game, okay, of tape of playing a lot of bump and run man coverage against frickin' dudes. Like all the guys that were drafted, most of them ahead of him, like Xavier Legette. Now, Xavier Legette got one of them. He got the back shoulder ball against Dalen Everett, but I don't think he got anything off Kamari Lassiter. Like, Kamari Lassiter is a strap. He has tape that says he can play corner at the NFL level. He does not have measurables or testing measurables that say he can, survive out there per their data. But what is data? He wasn't even a data guy coming out of high school. This was a 3-star outside of the 1,500 before he even committed to Georgia. You know why? Because he went to a little podunk private school right outside of Tuscaloosa, and nobody really knew about him. And then he committed to Georgia, and boom, all of a sudden he's a 4-star.
And another opportunity I think people tend to forget is when you're a defensive back your rookie year, like, you have a target on your back. Yeah. Kamari Lassiter's going to get more opportunities than offensive rookies just because people are going to be constantly going at him. So you're going to have that.
They tried that shit his first year starting.
Yeah.
And I don't know did y'all pick up on it? Because everyone that watched it like critically on tape figured it out really early that, early in the year they tried to attack Lassiter. Late in the year they started attacking Ringo because everyone on tape was like, damn, quit throwing it 3, man. We can't get him.
Yeah.
Like, everyone saw it. The NFL was like, boy, he runs 4.53.
Yeah,
I do remember that. That is a good point to make.
Yeah.
So I think that Kamari might be one of the guys that has one of the better seasons as a rookie, just because, again, like, you're going to be put in a position to have more opportunities and make more plays than anyone else on that team. Like, even anyone else in that class, just because you're going to be the rookie cornerback. Everyone's going to go for you.
This one would be hard to measure, but I think just because of how badly they've needed it, and so I think that when he gets in there and he figures it out and he plays really well, he's going to get a lot of praise as a Marius. Like, when he plays well for the Bengals, like, Bengals fans are going to appreciate that so much.
Man, you talking about a good security system. They got 3 6'7" plus 330 pound plus tackles. They got both the Browns, Trent and Orlando, and Amarius Mims.
There isn't a world
large humans.
There isn't a world where they try to put one of those at guard, is there?
Oh, dude, they paid those other 2 guys a little bit too much money to be asking them to play guard.
That's what I'm saying. But like
Amarius would be like, oh, word, immediate holdout. Immediate holdout. No, would never happen. Now, Orlando coming out of Oklahoma, if you guys remember, he immediately got guard projections because some bitch took a day and a half to run the 40.
Yeah, it was like a 5.7.
I think they ran like 5.68 in the damn 40 at 330 or 340 some odd pounds.
But again, who cares, dude? What the 10-yard split look like?
They were slow. I think it was 2 seconds.
Yeah, it's going to be slow.
But he was not moving. The good news is most offensive tackles in the NFL nowadays pretty much play within like you got to beat the guy in 3 steps, like 3 kick steps, and get in front of the guy, you know, and play strong. As long as if you're 6'8", if you're 6'8", he's 6'8".
So now that we're kind of in this post-spring era, and a lot of the questions that we've had about roster,
we done with rookie talk.
I think we are. Do you have a rookie you think is going to be other than Ladd?
Bull's got an opportunity to play.
I was about to say,
Tyke's got an opportunity to play. Those 2 guys.
I just picked Kamara because I think corners get targeted more. Like you can put safeties are more zone players more often than not.
Tyke flashes so much though that he might get national coverage quick. You know, pick 6 early, something crazy.
Yeah, he's definitely in a better position to be like one of these impactful players where people get to know him very, very quickly.
You know who? This is off topic, but you know who I saw made a roster or at least got picked up?
Who?
Don Blaylock's playing for the Jets right now.
Really?
Yeah, Dom, bro.
Don Blaylock's playing for the Jets.
William Moat got a tryout.
Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah,
he was out there throwing some seeds.
Good for Dom, man.
I done seen it. Oh, thoughts from the trail. Milton's got a damn long snapper that's sub-7 in game.
I don't know what that means, but sounds good.
That is the time from when he moves the football to when the punter snaps at 0.7 seconds.
I know what you meant by the time. I don't know what's a good time, though.
Anything sub-7. Anything sub-7 is NFL level.
Gotcha. Noted.
But he's like 5'11", 185 pounds. The dudes that snap in the SEC nowadays, I mean, Moat's a normal sized human for most standards. He's like 6'1", 225. He's a big guy. I think he actually measured like 240 at the combine. Much bigger. But anyways, some of these NFL, or like SEC snappers are like 6'5". They're converted tight ends that couldn't quite make it.
I was about to say, like, why do you need your
throw seeds?
Why do you need your long snapper to be big?
Cover.
Wouldn't you rather have your long snapper be fast though?
I mean, I would prefer my long snapper be like Will Snellings, who turned down major like Division I offers to come long snap at the University of Georgia. He turned down like Memphis to play linebacker to come long snap at Georgia.
Atta boy.
So that's who's probably going to win the job this year for Georgia. Look at us talking long snapping.
Special teams, special players. You're not a sketch guy?
I don't dislike it. It's just everyone's doing it right now.
Yeah, I mean, I watch it.
It's funny.
Really?
It's funny. Yeah. Good vibes.
Yeah.
But no, going back to this other question I was asking, that now that we're in kind of this post-spring era, what are some of the still lingering questions that you have about this roster? That we did this as a give them 3 segment, but obviously you don't have 3 off the top of your head prepared, so we'll just let you kind of spitball.
Ooh, we can figure it out. 3 on the fly. You ready? 1, who's going to start a corner? Nice and easy.
There you go.
What's going to happen there? 2, who's going to start a star, and what's it going to look like in terms of rotation? 3rd and long, are they going to play like Dalen at star? But we talked about that, and we'd heard about that, and we kind of saw the rumblings of that during the spring. Didn't see any of that during G-Day, though, looking back at it. Okay, they let Jonel Aguero survive.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And there were times where he competed, and there were times, as you saw on the tape, where, you know, he kind of got picked on. Some of those bigger plays to Dom Lovett were on, you know, Jonah Aguero's coverage. But again, he did really, really compete, and God forbid they got 45 takes at it. You know what I mean? They had a bunch of cracks at that defensive back core as a whole. So there's that. And then number 3, let's see here. What do the mid-summer enrollees look like?
That's a great one.
Look at me. That's why they pay me the big bucks.
That does stink, though, because you're not going to see Ben Urosic and Nate Frazier until, like, a blowout, whenever the first blowout happens. You'd have to, or not, maybe not Urosic.
Yeah, you'll see Urosic sometime soon, I would imagine.
Yeah.
And you would imagine he's pretty caught up on the playbook, right?
He's a Stanford guy. He's been studying that shit for 7 months.
He had that 3 days in.
Yeah, I was about to say, I mean, as soon as he committed, I'm sure that they found a way to get him that info.
I don't know what the rules are on that with college transfers. In high school, you're not allowed to get the playbook until you get there, supposedly. But that shit don't work.
Yeah, who's enforcing that shit?
Nobody.
Exactly.
Nobody.
Did you want to
figure out tampering?
We got to get Brooks 3 first.
Oh, my bad.
Oh, give 3.
There you go.
Ooh,
Sorry about
loud clap.
Yeah, I can go next. My first one, what kind of offensive changes, if any, will there be this season? We saw it in spring, but you really don't see a whole lot of changes that you would be making this year in a spring game. And I'm not talking about like they're going to completely revamp an offense or Mike Bobo's going to do any drastic changes, but I think that you are going to see some type of form of changes because you're a lot more confident in your running back room this year than you were last year. I think there's just more depth. I think you could see some more uses out of that. And plus you got all these wide receivers that are supposedly going to be great. They're going to be all-stars for you, and you want to get them touches. Like I just think like more so spread of reps, spread of touches, like spreading of the football, like those sorts of things. Like I want to know how those things are going to change, if there are going to be any changes. Plus, two, you don't have a Brock Bowers at tight end. You have you have a multitude of great tight ends in your room still. But
I saw Lawson Lucky today.
Oh yeah,
yeah, he was on the sideline of that Norcross scrimmage. I saw Bo Hewley today. Bo Hewley got to be 310. He's put it on. He needed to. Came out of high school at 250.
Good 310.
Yeah, I mean he's carrying it well. Lawson looked like Lawson. So there's that.
Good stuff.
Didn't talk to him. Did not say a word to them. Ops, if you're listening.
Number 2, so I have it written down as how is Anthony Evans going to be utilized, but I'm more so getting at like what are you going to do with Anthony Evans, Arian Smith, and Michael Jackson? Like how are you going to use those guys in a variety of ways? Like I would imagine that Anthony Evans' role for this football team is not going to be the same thing as Arian Smith, but like how are you not only going to get touches for all those guys, or like which ones are you going to use? Like I would imagine
Go ahead.
Anthony Evans is going to get majority of the run.
Yeah, just give me like 3 dudes. Give me like a guy that's got like 950, a dude that's got 750, and a dude that's got 600. And just, I feel like sometimes, and the room looks like this. There's like 9 good ones. We go through the list every time, and it's like, God dang, there's like 8 of them that could play. They look like really good. That could be options and need to get touches. But like, feed, get in a rhythm. Feed. Like especially like Dylan Bell can like really physically dominate in this conference. You would imagine Ra Thomas could as well. But now we're just rattling off names again. Colby Young. Like there's so many of them.
Yeah, that's exactly why I said they're not going to have a 1,000-yard receiver. Yeah. There's too much talent that you got to feed.
Yeah, so you could place this, I guess, on the overall wide receiver room, but I think like your speed guys, like just interested to see how those guys are utilized and how it's spread amongst them. And then also my final one, how quickly are some of these freshmen going to be rolled out this year? How quickly are you going to see like KJ Bolden? How quickly are you going to see him? Ellis Robinson? And maybe not even in like, oh, we see them in the fourth quarter because Georgia's up 20 or something like that. Like how quickly do we see them put in like first quarter, like KJ, meaningful snaps? Like
KJ week 1 Clemson. They'll roll him out there. In the years past, the 5 stars that immediately have shown that they have something in practice, like Ellis Robinson made an insane play this spring in practice where they like, okay, that guy belongs. You know, he like immediately shows he belongs, and they have immense talent. So these guys like do something in practice where it flashes. Michael Williams was like this. Okay, immediately as soon as he got there, they were like, okay, well, I mean, shit, he's one of our best 20 players on that side of the ball. Well, what happens if we put him in the game and that 5-star trait that made him a 5-star, that gamer trait where he's just like, he makes plays on third down, right? Oh, the ball's in the air. I'm going to go get it. 5-star safety. Okay. They kind of like, they'll throw that guy out there in like real big games early and just be like, hey man, let's see if the kid does something crazy.
How you doing these flames?
Yeah. Like, let's see if Buddy is just like, him, you know, like let's see if he like swims immediately.
Him check.
Malachi swam immediately. Michael Williams swam immediately. I think KJ Bolden will swim immediately.
Gotcha. Yeah. So that was my last question. Just like seeing how quickly, like in those situations specifically, again, not garbage time, but in those scenarios. So how quickly does that happen for some of them?
Oh, that boy Jay will give him 3. Oh, that was
a little rusty.
Yeah, it's been a while.
That was some C-.
All right, so my 3. The first one, this is a question that I think the only time you're really going to get an answer to it was spring, and it's kind of unfortunate that you didn't. But We have no idea what Ryan Puglisi looks like right now.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, there's a time frame.
As the general public.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a general public.
There's been tea leaves out. He's been lighting it up at practice. He looks great, and that's very exciting. But as someone who doesn't get to go to all this practice, doesn't get to see things like that, you don't really have an idea as to what Ryan Puglisi looks like. And I think that's a question we really want an answer in spring. Obviously, didn't get to happen because of injuries, but
I would say the tea leaves say that Ryan Puglisi showed all the signs of promise in the areas of the reasons why they took him. Okay, they took him because he has immense physical traits, immense mental willingness to compete. I had a coach tell me this week on the trail, he used this term, competitive character. He has really, really high competitive character. Those were the reasons that they took that individual, on top of the fact that he's a good 6'3 3/4, 225 pounds, and probably runs in the 4.75 range. Okay, there's a whole lot and can throw every ball. There's a whole lot of reasons to have taken Ryan Puglisi and all of those kind of flash signs of themselves while also being a freshman.
Yeah.
I mean, even at the we only got practice observations 3 times this spring? Maybe even 2. I think it was 2 times this spring. The second time we were out there, just something simple like routes on air, all 4 quarterbacks throw at one time. So all 2 routes over here, 2 routes over here. He threw to the wrong guy one time. Just like simple shit like that. Like if we're missing that, we're probably misdiagnosing cover 2 versus, oh shit, they rolled post snap. You know what I mean? Like when it really comes to time of football.
Yeah.
So there were signs of freshman flashes, but there are also signs of, oh, that's why we took that guy.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
So my second question was, how big of an issue is the D-line going to be? Now, there was worry coming into spring. They looked great in the spring game against the offensive line. But I think that if you had to pinpoint and say, like, what's the unit this year that everyone's kind of worried about the most, it is defensive line. I don't think they're going to be a massive issue. I don't think they're going to lose games because of your defensive line. But I do think it's going to be interesting to watch just what does that defensive line do in situations and how does it affect the game? Because you've had absolute game breakers the past few seasons where if you don't have them now and it's kind of you can't control the line of scrimmage, you're going to be in a lot of trouble.
I'm not necessarily worried about the defensive line after watching the spring game.
Yeah, I'm not worried about him either, but I think that is kind of the one question where you're like, what's it going to look like against other guys?
Watching it back over and over again. And I multiple times during the film study, I just talked about just like that's an NFL rep. Like Mike Hill's is going to do things in the run this year that I've already made the comparison on the show. I don't want to keep repeating takes, but his floor is Jadeveon Clowney. He's gonna play the run this year with flashes of Jadeveon Clowney-esque physical traits. And it's a very similar comp in the sense that Mikel's still got to end up delivering on sack production. But that's bottom line. I think that's going to be every edge rusher at the University of Georgia.
Yeah.
Those are things you're going to have to project to the NFL.
He only had 6 sacks, bro. Why is he in the first round?
But down in, down out, snap in, snap out. Give me a defensive end that's got tape like him. You won't. It's hard to find it in this coming up class.
My final question is, how much has Carson Beck progressed from last season? Like, we saw him in the spring game, and you can't really get a diagnostics as to how much he's improved in games like that. Like, you're kind of not necessarily going through the motions, but you're just getting reps out there. It's not real game situations. Obviously, he had that drive to tie things up at the end of the game that was really impressive. Showed that he has that clutch gene, but I think there are some areas where you want to kind of question, like, how big of a step is he taking here? And I think that you're only going to get that answer with time and games and reps.
Yeah, we definitely didn't see any progression in the deep balls over the middle of the field. That's the last
Infinity Stone.
Yeah, it's the last box. The dude's touch outside, like whether it be corner balls in the end zone or back shoulder fades in the end zone or anything near a pylon outside the edges, anything out there, he is dialed with a tremendous touch too. Digs over the middle, tremendous touch and timing. The one issue has been, hey buddy, we got to throw this ball 50 yards on this post. It's been missed. Pretty, I'm not going to say repetitively, but
with too much consistency, more consistency than you'd like.
Just too much.
Yeah.
It's been missed too much. I think he would even admit that.
So that was all my 3.
And it's still very much unanswered.
Christian Kirby, give him 3.
Hey, attaboy.
I was waiting on you to do it.
I'm a little rusty myself. That's on me.
I'll take over when need be.
Hey, way to lead, brother.
Thanks, Jay Will.
Way to lead, brother.
You can't give yourself 3. So I wasn't.
No, yeah, that's
a little too much
sometimes.
So circling back to Hugh Freeze today, what's the final round?
It is the final round.
The final round, he was talking about it, and they were just kind of cutting up about certain things.
The next round.
Something about
next round.
Something about a round.
Definitely the next round.
Okay.
Nice set they got over there.
Yeah, it is. So they were talking about Hugh Freeze, and
I mean, it's one camera.
Yeah, that's it.
It's not.
They got to put everybody in one shot.
A stationary camera. It's a good guess though. Yeah, if you're into guess.
But anyways, a question came up to Hugh Freeze about, do you have Kalen DeBoer's contact number? Do you have his phone number? Do you text him ever? I don't know what prompted that, but Hugh Freeze revealed that actually all 16 SEC coaches are in a group chat together. So that kind of prompted me and Jay Will to think about some hypothetical questions of, certain things about this group chat, such as like who's the most active, who's the least active, things such as that.
I thought it was funny too, like how he has specifically mentioned like, now this group chat had to be made because the SEC made us make this. Like it's all for like the SEC and all the professionals over there. Like they want us all in one group chat so they can talk to us. But he also mentioned like, now there's some people that talk in there a lot more than others, and there's some people in there that don't talk at all unless they have to. So yeah, that's why we wanted to create these hypotheticals around it.
You think Greg Sankey made him do this? Is that what you said?
Yeah, he said like they were forced to make like a group chat.
They definitely
with all
were.
of them.
That's what Hugh Freeze is claiming.
Dang.
So who do you think's the most active member in that group chat?
I feel like Eli Drinkowitz really wants to be liked.
That's what all the SEC coaches were like. That's what all the guys interviewed were like. Is it Drink?
Everybody in there, they're like, it's got to be Eli, right? But Hugh was like, Eli's one of my best friends. Like, it's great. I said Shane Beamer. I feel like Shane Beamer's always like, it seems like the type of guy that always wants to chime into every conversation, like wants to try and be the funny guy sometimes when maybe he really isn't.
I know how this is going to work though. This is like all 16 in one chat, but the Saban tree kind of has their own like sub chat, and they
side text,
and they side text and bullshit with the other guys. It's like Kirby, Kiffin, and Sark. And they leave Napier out because
damn,
that kind of thing. But they got the Saban tree, and they're just out here just like, man, can you believe that punk ass so and so?
Can you imagine like you get fired from that and you have to leave the group chat?
That's what I was wondering. I was gonna
Billy Napier has left the group.
So awkward.
I was gonna ask how that works. Like, do you think that someone gets to delete them out of the chat? Like you just expected to leave?
Admin kick Billy.
That's like, bro. That's such a sad message to see come across. So and so has left the chat.
Who do you think's getting flamed the most in that chat?
First of all, who's least active?
I said Clark Lee. That dude ain't got nothing to say because why would he have anything to say? Like he'd be scared to be opinionated amongst those group. He's like, I'm just gonna pretend like I don't belong. Like I'm just gonna fly low, like Vanderbilt should. I'm just gonna hold my place here while I can and just.
I don't know, man. Peace. Clark Lee's first SEC presser was 37 minutes long.
Well, he's got to get it out then. That's his only moment where he's like, you know what? This is my time.
He's venting.
Yeah, this is my time where I get to stand here.
It's definitely Arnett or Clark Lee, I think.
Bro, Clark Lee's post practice speeches had my knee hurting so bad.
Who's the instigator in that chat? Like just stirring the pot always. I mean, me and Jay will feel like we know the answer to that. Who do you think?
I had an answer for least active. First of all,
who do you think?
It's Billy Napier.
You think
Billy Napier walks around with Eeyore face all day long? No way he's talking in a chat with 16 coaches.
Interesting.
That's interesting. I feel like Billy has a social.
You think so? His public persona is that he does not talk. Brian Kelly's getting the most flamed, no doubt.
Ooh, Brian Kelly's a good. We said I think it's Shane Beamer who might be getting the most flamed.
I said Eli. Because I think Eli just kind of, he could be a little goofy sometimes, and I could see someone like Lane just being like, Eli, shut up, dude. Like, just hold on for a minute or something like that. I don't know.
Bro, am I reading this is a SEC coaching rankings list, and it has Kalen DeBoer 1 and Georgia Kirby Smart number 2.
Who made that list?
Was this CBS? I was just trying to get a list of coaches so I can crack on them. And it popped the rankings, and I was like, well, that'll have all 16 of them. But anyways, where were we at? Most flamed?
Yeah, most flamed.
Kiffin's cracking the most jokes.
Yeah.
right? He's probably not the most active.
I would say
but when
Kiffin's
he is, he's trying to go for some throws.
Kiffin's the instigator.
Kiffin's the one that hops in, like maybe just chimes in one time and stirs the pot, and then just watches it burn down.
Just drops a bomb.
Yeah.
Here, y'all deal with this. Y'all hear about this new NIL deal?
Hey, so-and-so, you get that player you're trying to poach from so-and-so's roster? Like, oh, my bad, wrong group.
But that's my thing about the whole, like, I know y'all talked Boise State earlier, and all these coaches talk about poaching. If it's that bad, why isn't anybody, like, y'all don't rat on each other? Like, because some of these coaches are like going to eventually band together. Most of these mid-major coaches are going to band together. They're just like, screw it, we're ratting them all out. We're going to give screenshots. We're going to give them all. He said that Boise State guy said he had 12 of them.
I think we're at a point in college football now
where everyone just looks away and we all do it, and it's
not
like
even
whatever.
that. Everyone's got dirt on everyone now. It's like it's almost like mutually assured destruction if you do this, to the point where it's like you send one, oh, this person's tampering. Well, this person knows this person is tampering. Who knows you're tampering? So it's like,
at this point, no one can enforce a rule anyways.
Yeah, so it's just I don't think there's any way you're gonna. I mean, all these coaches can really do is complain and be like, something has to be done.
That's literally it.
This is unacceptable.
We've been at a standstill for like 3 years where people just bitch and moan about the sport and nobody does shit.
Yeah,
except for expanding the playoff for more money.
Yeah, that's literally all we've done.
Love it. And change tremendous leadership.
Tweak a little rules to make it more like the NFL.
Yeah. More like the NFL, more expansion, more money.
This is my favorite question of the SEC coach group.
I got one after this.
Go ahead and ask yours then.
Okay. Who's the emoji user? Who's the one that's just randomly throwing in stupid emojis? Like if they talk about a dog, they're putting an emoji of a dog. Like who's the mom texter of the group?
Sam Pittman.
I was gonna say I'd see
Sam Pittman, and he only oh yeah, he uses a lot of emojis, mostly a hog.
Always puts a hog at the end of his text.
Yeah, for now. That was going to be a sad day when he has to leave.
Sam Pittman sending hogs in the group chat. You do it all the time.
That was good. That was not bad. Yeah, emoji user definitely Sam Pittman.
Yeah, that's right.
The pit boss.
Who's got the green bubble?
Mike Elko.
Who's the Android user?
Mike Elko. Mike Elko strikes me as a droid user.
I said Brian Kelly. He seems like the oddball. I mean, he's already the oddball, so I feel like he would be the one that is.
Brian Kelly strikes me as the guy who used a stylus for his phone. Like one of those Samsung ones you pull it out the top and you write on it.
Chad has a good suggestion. Stoops.
Yeah, I forgot about Stoops.
I can see it with Stoops.
Yeah, Lexington, Kentucky may not know what an iPhone is.
It's not that bad, dude. Like, gee.
It was all right. It was a good time.
Yeah, it was
one of my last good times. You know?
Well, don't say it like that.
On the sauce.
I get that, but
yeah.
It was a good time.
I've had tremendous time since.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But one of my last on the sauce.
Would you rather go back to Starkville or Lexington?
Oh my God, Lexington 1,000 times over. I'm never going back to Starkville. I'm not going to promise that. I do not want to go back to Starkville. No. No. I'm good. Miss me.
Is that bad?
It's just, man. It's miss. I'm here. Let me give you some background. We got 5 minutes to kill. I have such a disdain for the state of Mississippi because of my Division II college football background.
That's fair.
Okay, Mississippi State, not Mississippi State, Delta State was out there, and Mississippi College was out there. And when the conference got reshuffled, we had 2 teams that we played 3 times over 5 years on the road, one of which was Delta State. We changed in a locker room no bigger than this basement that my mom owns and lets us rent out. And shout out. So Delta State was one of them. Valdosta State was the other one. And Mississippi College was out there in Jackson. Okay. Let me tell you something about Mississippi. Ain't nothing out there, bro. Ain't nothing out there. Nothing. It's like, I don't even know how to explain it. Always hot as hell. Hot as, oh my God. No matter what time of the year. We went out there in the middle of October. It was like suddenly 90 degrees. We were playing on a Thursday in Rome, Georgia. It was 38 on a Thursday night game. The next week, we traveled to play on a Saturday in Jackson, Mississippi. It was 90 degrees. I threw up on the ball that day.
Nice.
Yeah, it was good times. Shout out Tyler Pullum. Quarterback.
It's tough.
It was tough. Drank too much water at the TV timeout. You know,
Crucial mistake.
Oh, a little Stetson Bennett moment.
Yeah. Or something like that.
So it's just you threw up water. It wasn't like chunks.
No. It was straight water.
That's fine.
Yeah. It's just football.
If I get to snap and it's like chunks all over, it's like, oh, damn, bro.
Yeah. It's like a 9-yard rush. I was laughing through the whole play. It was one of my favorite moments of my college career.
Was QB Matty?
He never knew. He never knew.
Did you ever tell him?
Yeah, eventually. The thing I used to do that really pissed him off, and this is not nice. Every once in a while, I just wouldn't wear a girdle at practice when we were in shorts. He didn't love that. As you could imagine. Especially when we're,
So no pads? You're just
when you're in shells some
just
days.
raw legs?
I mean, just shorts and some briefs, dog. Just it wasn't necessarily. You can get.
I get it.
You get it.
I get what you're saying here.
I didn't like that. Especially like 3/4 of the way through practice.
I feel like that's dangerous. I feel like that's more dangerous for you.
No, dude, we're in shells. I was a good football player, dude. I'm never on the ground in shells.
That's not what I'm talking
You're
about.
never getting in my legs in shells. What are you worried about? Safe.
Never mind.
Oh, for the
low hanging fruit.
Yeah, I mean, but I'm in briefs.
That's true.
But you get up under the center and.
Speaking of low-hanging fruit, did you see this Kirby Smart thing?
What happened with Kirby?
So there's a clip. Was it the PGA Tour that posted?
It's a pro-am leading up into the Regions tournament.
So Kirby's with these pro golfers that are coaching him and stuff, and they're basically telling him, I don't know a lot about golf, but basically they're telling him, there's caddies, and essentially he's got to take a shot where he's got to bend it around the right corner of a tree line.
They're telling him to lay up. They're telling him to take a club off and just play it safe. And Kirby says, I don't ever lay up. I go big or go home.
Yeah. So he hits a 5-iron, and I think it's a good shot.
5 hybrid, I believe.
Clipped a tree, didn't he?
I think he did.
Yeah.
But essentially now, so they're talking about, you feel good about that now, don't you? She's like, oh yeah, I never play it safe. And he makes this like he's got big ass balls now. And that meme is going everywhere.
Kirby Smart, fan of Major League, the movie, obviously.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah.
Let them hang.
Oh, he's always good for one of these moments in the off season.
We get a new Kirby gif like that about every 2 or 3 years, where it's just like, good.
Was that Podrick Harrington with him?
I don't know.
Yes.
They were the ones cussing like sailors. Like, I mean, they were getting after it.
Yeah, they were.
Shout out Brits.
Sure.
Not American.
That sounds like
European.
European for sure,
across the pond.
but definitely not French.
No.
Had some Scottish English twang to it.
Maybe even Australian, but who knows?
Perhaps one of those.
I love Australians, man. They're the best.
They are.
They're hilarious.
Shout out Brett Thorson.
Shout out Brett Thorson.
He's got like 2 more years after this. Did you know that?
I thought he only got this year.
I thought he applied for an additional.
That's what I thought, and I thought this was the additional. I could remember though.
I think he might get another one.
Wow.
So he'll come back for 2020.
I'm not saying he will. Maybe. I don't know the situation.
In the last minute, this is one question: is it a punter sample size affect their stock at all?
Not if you got a foot shoot.
Because like the tape Brett Thorson's put on is like he's one of the best punters in the nation, but it's also like, oh, you punted 10 times this year, great.
A fooch
or booch.
Now you're getting close.
Yeah.
Now you're close to gooch.
I think with punters, most punter situations, it's like, hey, come punt for us.
Yeah.
Right?
No.
There's in-game punters, and there's obviously yips and situations like being big time and like situational punting and all that stuff obviously matters. But like at the NFL level, you got to have a boot.
Yep.
To even start. So there's that.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Are we good?
We're good.
We're good.
We'll see y'all Monday. Love you. Bye.